Chapter 510. Within the astral space. The entire astral space was like an angry ocean, spinning hysterically. The entire space was spinning and twisting, and at the core of the spinning was the origin, which was the exact same color as the flower paste. It's just as I expected. Qin Yu's consciousness had completely fused with the astral space. Last time, Qin Yu had discovered that a small area of space around the origin was twisting and spinning, and it was slowly extending at an undetectable speed. After so many years, the twisting space had finally extended to the entire astral space. The entire astral space was spinning and vibrating. What's the next realm after the origin realm? Qin Yu began to ponder. On one side, Qin Yu's awareness was in contact with the origin. On the other side, it was in contact with the flower paste that was flowing like a liquid outside of the stellar space. The special ancient aura of the flower paste space caused Qin Yu to feel very calm. So, Qin Yu's consciousness suddenly woke up. Qin Yu's awareness was able to sense that the origin was expanding and contracting like a heart. Although it was very faint, so faint that Qin Yu could barely sense it after fusing with his consciousness. The origin is shrinking. Over the years, the origin had become smaller and smaller, and now it was only the size of a quail egg. But in the past, Qin Yu couldn't sense the changes in the origin just by fusing with his consciousness. But now he did. The origin expanded and shrank, and every time it went through this process, it would become slightly smaller. He hadn't noticed it in the past, but now he did. What did this mean? It meant that the origin was shrinking by a large margin, so large that Qin Yu could sense it. In an instant, Qin Yu's consciousness completely returned to his body. Opening his eyes, Qin Yu's lips curled into a smile. The entire astral space has completely transformed, and the origin's transformation is about to reach its end. The next realm should be. Qin Yu's mind was like a flash of lightning as various scenes appeared one after another. The origin had shrunk to its limit and suddenly exploded, forming countless stars and evolving into the entire universe. There were also cases where the origin shrank to the extreme, forming another black hole. There were also cases where the origin point of an astral space exploded and entered the flower paste space. These scenes represented some of the insights Qin Yu had gained over the years. Qin Yu knew that these scenes could become the next realm after the origin realm. Every realm represented a path of evolution, but there was only one path that was perfect and could allow one to ascend to the ultimate evolution path. Which path was that? Qin Yu was not sure. If you take the wrong path, you will reach the extreme. Although it won't be the most perfect path, the attack power will definitely be very strong. Qin Yu thought to himself. In Qin Yu's opinion, if the origin was shrunk to the limit and evolved again, it would evolve into a new black hole. Then a new origin was formed. At that time, the origin power would be condensed to a terrifying level. Qin Yu believed that this was a circular path, but it was a side path. When this side path reached the extreme, the attack power wouldn't be weak. Qin Yu had a feeling that he wouldn't fail if he took this path. However, it couldn't be considered a success. Which is the most correct path and the ultimate path? Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, he had thought of all kinds of evolutionary paths, but none of them made him feel perfect. What Qin Yu pursued was the feeling of enlightenment he had when he comprehended the black hole realm. Qin Yu believed that if he were to one day think of that evolutionary path and have a pleasantly surprised feeling of enlightenment, then perhaps it would be the most successful evolutionary path. The origin is still shrinking. According to this rate, it should take hundreds of years before the origin shrinks to its limit. I still have hundreds to thousands of years to prepare. Qin Yu thought to himself, if I can't figure out that evolutionary path in these hundreds of years, I can only take other paths. Qin Yu understood very well. The moment the origin shrank to its limit, he had to make a choice to guide the origin realm to the next realm. Master, what's wrong? Uncle Fu asked. Qin Yu woke up. He smiled and said, it's nothing. From today onwards, in the next several hundred years, I've decided to stop researching the array path. I'll go to the edge of the Black Dragon Pool and find a territory to experiment with the formation arrays that I've deduced. Several hundred years to the deduction of formation arrays was too short a time. At Qin Yu's current level, the formation arrays that he needed to deduce generally required over 1,000 years or even longer to succeed. Several hundred years was simply useless. In these several hundred years, he would be experimenting with formation arrays while comprehending the next stage of the stellar transformation. Uncle Fu, you continue to stay in the Jianglan's realm. I'll go to the edge of the Black Dragon Pool and find a territory by myself. There's no need to trouble Xiao Hei with this matter. Qin Yu instructed and then disappeared from the Jianglan's realm. Through the Jianglan's realm, Qin Yu's divine awareness discovered that there was no one on this remote official road. Thus Qin Yu appeared on this road. After that, he proceeded forward with a gentle speed. Leaving the Sealfield village and choosing a mountain to train on was the plan that Qin Yu and them had prepared. Naturally, when they were in the Sealfield village, they had purchased a map of the powers surrounding the Yuchi city. This sort of map was very cheap. It only required a single low-quality divine spiritual stone. After all, the bandits' territory surrounding the Yuchi city was something that anyone who had lived for a long time would know. Back then, I had planned to choose a mountain to train on together with Fei. Never would I have expected that he would have gone to the Azura Sea now. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. He then suppressed this sort of thought. Qin Yu's speed was not fast. However, he had a special rhythm. Maintaining this speed and rhythm, Qin Yu had already walked for 2 entire days. If someone were to look at Qin Yu's eyes, they would discover that Qin Yu's eyes were lifeless. That was because Qin Yu had only slightly paid attention to the way he walked. Practically all of his attention was focused on thinking about the next stage of the origin realm. In the past, Qin Yu had spent over 200,000 years studying the array path. This had caused Qin Yu's soul's level to increase a bit. His divine awareness had become much stronger and his ability to deduce things had become much stronger. Within Qin Yu's mind, the scene of a revolving nebula, the scene of a Lu Xing, the scene of a floating stellar core, the scene of a planet transforming into a star, the scene of a star exploding into a star, the scene of a star exploding into a black hole. After that, it formed the origin. One scene after another flashed past Qin Yu's mind like lightning. After that, Qin Yu's mind began to change with lightning speed. All kinds of possible transformations were appearing unceasingly. After that, they were being filtered by Qin Yu. One branch transformations after another appeared in Qin Yu's mind. After the transformations, Qin Yu immediately discarded the branch paths that increased his strength. After that, Qin Yu spent even more effort researching the branch paths that increased his strength. While he was pondering suddenly, "Oh, it's you." A voice directly entered Qin Yu's ears. Even though Qin Yu was pondering, he still paid a bit of attention to the outside world. Qin Yu's mind immediately stopped analyzing the transformations of the stellar transformations. Qin Yu's eyes instantly turned spirited. He raised his head and looked towards the left. There was a white-robed youth flying through the air. The white-robed youth smiled and nodded towards Qin Yu, then flew over to Qin Yu's side. "This seems to be the 3rd time we've met." "Right, it's the 3rd time." Qin Yu smiled as he replied. The white-robed youth was none other than Huang Jing. "Haha, you were also in the restaurant that day. You should know that I'm a girl now. There's no need for me to conceal myself." Huang Jing lightly smiled. The white warrior outfit she wore immediately changed into a yellow gauze gown. Right before Qin Yu, the gentle and quiet youth turned into a gentle and quiet young girl. "Lady Huang Jing, I am Qin Yu," Qin Yu said respectfully. Qin Yu remembered that this Huang Jing was the large group captain of Mount Dazzling Gold. Her status was one of the top upper echelons in the entire eastern region of the divine realm. Furthermore, this Huang Jing ought to be a high-level heavenly deity. Qin Yu remembered that the gray-clothed man was able to freeze over 30 cultivators with a single thought. Only Huang Jing was able to slowly struggle free. Although the gray-clothed man was able to suppress Huang Jing with a slight increase in strength, Huang Jing's strength was still not to be looked down upon. "Do not call me Lady Huang Jing, I am not used to it. You can just call me Huang Jing," said Huang Jing with a smile. Huang Jing's smile easily gave others a warm feeling. Qin Yu nodded. "Huang Jing, as far as I know, it's been over 1,000 years since I last saw you. Could it be that you've been in Yuqi City for the past 1,000 years? 100,000 years in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm was equivalent to over 1,000 years in the outside world. No, last time, I brought some subordinates to accompany my younger brother. However, this time around I have come to see my younger brother by myself," Huang Jing explained with a smile. "Oh," Qin Yu nodded. "Huang Jing, weren't you in Mount Dazzling Gold? Why is your younger brother here?" Qin Yu clearly remembered that when Huang Jing's subordinates were chatting in the restaurant, they had also revealed a piece of information. That Huang Jing's younger brother was very powerful, much more powerful than ordinary cultivators of Mount Dazzling Gold. Huang Jing lightly smiled. "Although my younger brother has also reached the heavenly deity level, he does not like the atmosphere of Mount Dazzling Gold. Thus he decided to live in Yuqi City. Forget about it, let's not talk about this anymore. Can you tell me about your situation?" Just like this, Qin Yu and Huang Jing walked side by side on the road. They walked past the lake and walked past the mountain forest. The two of them were casually chatting about each other's matters. Qin Yu did not conceal his situation and merely slightly changed some of the important matters. "Ah, we're about to arrive." Huang Jing suddenly looked to her surroundings. She then smiled to Qin Yu and said, "Never would I have expected that, unknowingly. I've already arrived at a fork in the road. Right now I will be heading north. What about you?" "Heading south," Qin Yu replied. Indeed, the headquarters of the Black Dragon Pool was located at a place relatively far to the south. Qin Yu still had to proceed south. After all, this was an official road and there were no bandits here. Huang Jing seemed to be a bit disappointed. She then lightly smiled. "In that case, let's meet again in the future. I'll be going to my younger brother's place first. Goodbye." Qin Yu nodded with a smile on his face. Huang Jing's figure immediately flew up and the ends of her gown fluttered in the wind. As she was flying up, Huang Jing suddenly turned to look at Qin Yu. "Qin Yu, truth be told, the feeling of being by your side earlier was very comfortable." "Very comfortable." Qin Yu was taken aback. "Don't think too much about it. It is very comfortable and my heart is calmer. I believe that if I am by your side more often, my rate of cultivation will increase greatly. Alright, goodbye." Huang Jing smiled at Qin Yu. Then she quickly flew northward. Qin Yu watched as Huang Jing's figure disappeared into the horizon. "Comfortable." Qin Yu revealed a self-deprecating smile. Then he continued moving southward. For Qin Yu, meeting Huang Jing was just a minor event in his journey. However, they had met 3 times in a row. Additionally, they had been separated for over 1,000 years. For them to meet again, it was indeed fate. This time around, Qin Yu increased his speed. He even began to control the space around his body to counteract a portion of the gravitational force. His speed was extremely fast. In merely 2 hours, he had traveled a distance that would take him 2 days to travel. In a single breath, Qin Yu passed through the territory of the Black Dragon Pool and arrived at the southern region of the Black Dragon Pool. The southern region of the Black Dragon Pool was very sparsely populated. There were also no villages. Normally there would not be many people there. As for Qin Yu, he chose a location at the southern edge of the Black Dragon Pool's territory. Although this location was located at the edge of the Black Dragon Pool's territory, there would still be many people from the Black Dragon Pool that would pass through this place. According to Qin Yu's plan, these people would become the people to test out his spirit formation. If these people were to be blamed, then they could only blame the Black Dragon Pool for being the one that Qin Yu was most familiar with among the 3 great bandit powers outside of Yuqi City. Not bad. Although this mountain is relatively small, it could still be considered to have verdant hills and limpid waters. Qin Yu looked to the mountain in front of him. This mountain was verdant and lush with many plants and trees. Although this mountain could not be considered to be large, with a height of only 2,000 meters, Qin Yu was very fond of it. From today onwards, I can be considered to have occupied a mountain as a king. This mountain shall be called Mount Bewitchu. Qin Yu displayed a smile on his face. Then, he began to walk toward Mount Bewitchu with large strides. Chapter 5:11. The Mount Bewitchu had verdant hills and limpid waters. There were even some demon beasts active in the mountain forest. There were no traces of humans in the entire mountain forest. It was very quiet. Following the arrival of Qin Yu, this Mount Bewitchu that was located at the southern border of the Black Dragon Pool now had a new master. The pond water was so clear that one could see the bottom. One could see the glossy rocks at the bottom of the pond as well as all kinds of fish swimming in the pond. There was a wooden house next to the pool. Outside of the wooden house stood a black-gowned, long-haired youth. Behind this youth was a slightly respectful old man who had a smile on his face. Uncle Fu, from today onwards, I will be living in this Mount Bewitchu. I will not be entering the Jianglan's realm for the time being. It's only several hundred years. It's better to live in the outside world. This will also allow Xiao Hei and them to have more time to train. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Yes, master. Uncle Fu said respectfully. Qin Yu swept his gaze all around him. He couldn't help but feel relaxed and happy. This place is very good. In a moment, I will set up a formation array around this Mount Bewitchu and let the people of the Black Dragon Pool have a taste of it. Master, before I test out the formation array, I have something that I need to show you. Uncle Fu suddenly said. Oh. Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu in surprise. What is it? Uncle Fu said respectfully. When the old master left, he left some things with me. Among them, he instructed me that when Master's array path reaches the initial stage of the palace hall, Master would be able to look at this scroll. A golden scroll suddenly appeared in Uncle Fu's hand. Initial stage of the palace hall. Qin Yu smiled. Indeed, compared to Uncle Fu's accomplishments in the array path, he could only be considered as having just reached the initial stage of the palace hall. Although his current comprehension of the array path was much stronger than his comprehension of the array path from 100,000 years ago. What's inside this scroll? Qin Yu received it curiously. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Master will know once you see it. This could be considered as some lighthouses on Master's path of the array path. Filled with curiosity, Qin Yu inserted his divine awareness into this golden scroll. Hello, my successor. By the time you see this scroll, I reckon that you would have already opened the artifacts hall and taken control of the entire bewitching god temple. Your comprehension of the array path has also reached a certain level. The reason I left this scroll behind is to let you know some of the detailed levels of array Dao, so that you can have a clearer understanding of your own position. The array formation ocean is boundless and no one knows its ultimate limit. Some formation masters roughly categorize their understanding of formations as the first realm, the second realm, and the third realm of the array path. But I think this kind of positioning is wrong. This was because everyone's first stage of the array Dao was different. For example, when I first comprehended the first level of array path, in terms of strength, I was 100 times weaker than when I spent 1 billion years to comprehend the first level of array path. For example, my servant Fu. Although Fu has been progressing in the first level of the array Dao, his array Dao strength is comparable to an ordinary second-level expert of the array Dao. Therefore, it was impossible to distinguish the level of formations in detail by just using the 3 major realms. This also caused me to personally determine the level of formations. Ever since the birth of the God realm, I can locate the corresponding level of all the formations that have appeared. In the 900 scrolls of the array path, there were many examples of formations, from simple to complex. However, the examples in the 900 scrolls of the array path were all level 1 formations, which are the most basic formations. Reading up to this point, Qin Yu's heart was shocked. Back then, when he completely grasped the 900 scrolls of the array path and comprehended the first realm of the array path, he thought that he was amazing. But now, it seemed that those were merely the lowest level of formations. As for the levels of formations, I have temporarily determined them to be 8 levels. The power and effects of these 8 levels of formations, I have recorded them in detail in the attached scroll. Level 1 formations are considered the foundation. To be able to set up level 2 formations, one can be considered to have stepped into the palace of formations. To be able to set up level 3 formations, one can be considered an expert of formations. To be able to set up level 4 formations, one can be considered an expert of formations. As for setting up level 5 formations, in the divine realm, in order to forge a heavenly divine artifact, one's cultivation in formations must at least reach the level of level 5 formations. Qin Yu secretly remembered it. To be able to set up level 5 formations, one can forge a heavenly divine artifact. In the entire divine realm, there are not many people who are able to set up level 5 formations. As for setting up level 6 formations, in the entire divine realm, there are probably less than 5 people who are able to set up level 6 formations. As for level 7 formations, level 8 formations, in history, only I, Cheho Yuan, am able to set them up. Qin Yu sucked in a mouthful of cold air. From the classification of formation arrays, Qin Yu was able to clearly sense Cheho Yuan's strength in the array path. Level 8 formations. To be able to set up level 7 and level 8 formations, only Cheho Yuan was able to do so. Qin Yu tried his best to calm his somewhat excited heart and continued reading. Among the 8 levels of formations, I am the only one who has reached level 7 and level 8. For the time being, I can ignore them. Level 1 to level 6 formations are already capable of locating the experts of the divine realm. Level 1 to level 6 formations all go from simple to complex. Even in the eyes of the array masters who are able to set up level 6 formations, the more superpositions, the more complex the formations are, the more powerful the formations are. Back then I also thought so. However, when I reached the 3rd level of the array path and set up level 7 formations, and even my highest level of formation was level 8, only then did I discover that level 1 to level 6 goes from simple to complex. From the 7th level onwards, the setting up of formations became even simpler. The Great Tao is the simplest. Perhaps this is the logic behind it. Qin Yu firmly remembered these words. However, Qin Yu was also somewhat confused. The more superpositions there were, the more powerful the formations would be. Formations required the various parts to be perfectly combined together. For example, 10 superpositions would naturally not be as powerful as 16 superpositions. However, why would level 7 and level 8 formations go from complex to simple? This is truly profound. Qin Yu bitterly smiled in his heart. The current him did not understand this logic. Perhaps he would understand it in the future. Regarding the effects of the 8 levels of formations, I have already given detailed examples in the supplementary scroll. I have given examples of the weakest and strongest formations of each level. My successor, the current you, it is best for you to not research level 7 and level 8 formations. After all, if you do not have a good foundation, you will not be able to research level 7 and level 8 formations. Instead, it will be detrimental to you. Of course, level 8 formations is my personal classification. It is not publicly recognized by the divine realm. Furthermore, in my heart, above level 8 formations, there should be level 9 formations and even level 10 formations. However, the current me is unable to make any more breakthroughs. My successor, I will leave the bewitching God Temple to you. I also hope that you will be able to help me pass on my title of Craftsman God. Work hard, my successor. After putting away the golden scroll, Qin Yu grew silent for a moment. Uncle Fu, give me the supplementary scroll containing Senior Cheho's detailed explanation of level 8 formations. Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu smiled and nodded. Master, there is one scroll with detailed explanation of level 1 to level 3 formations. There are 3 scrolls with detailed explanation of level 4 formations, 12 scrolls with detailed explanation of level 5 formations, and 98 scrolls with detailed explanation of level 6 formations. There is only one scroll for level 7 and 8 formations. After saying that, a pile of golden scrolls appeared in front of Uncle Fu. Qin Yu immediately used his divine awareness to roughly scan through the scrolls. Qin Yu did not carefully read through the scrolls. He only roughly scanned through them. Cheho Yuan had recorded the weakest and strongest formations of each level. In other words, there were only 2 formations of each level. One was strong and one was weak. Only level 8 formations were recorded. These 98 scrolls only recorded 2 formations. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Complicated to the extreme, it was indeed terrifying. Master, when other people in the divine realm forge divine artifacts to reinforce their formations, because the formations are too complicated, it causes them to take an exceptionally long time. This also causes them to take an extremely long time to forge a heavenly divine artifact. However, Old Master forged a heavenly divine artifact with incomparable ease. Uncle Fu said proudly. How could the title of the craftsman god be taken lightly? Uncle Fu, I have not carefully read through the scrolls. Tell me, what level is my current formation level? Qin Yu asked. Uncle Fu said respectfully. Master is extremely talented. In merely 200,000 years, you can be considered to have stepped into the level of level 3 formations. Although it is considered to be one of the weaker level 3 formations, it is already very impressive. Level 3 formations. Qin Yu nodded slightly. This speed could be considered to be not bad. Uncle Fu, what about you? Qin Yu suddenly became curious. Qin Yu knew that in the entire divine realm, there were less than 5 people who had reached the level of level 6 formations. As for level 5 formations, they were definitely extremely rare. After all, at that level, one could forge heavenly divine artifacts. Uncle Fu smiled modestly. Back then, Old Master would often give pointers to this old servant. This old servant also did not dare to slack off in the slightest. After so many years, I can be considered to have stepped into the level of level 5 formations. Chapter 5:12. Level 5 Formation Array. Doesn't that mean that I would be able to craft heavenly divine artifacts? Qin Yu said in a slightly surprised manner. Uncle Fu shook his head and said, reaching level 5 formation array comprehension is merely one of the requirements for crafting heavenly divine artifacts. At the same time, there are also other requirements regarding flames, materials, and so on. As I do not have a soul myself, I am naturally unable to use my divine awareness to control the flames. Thus, I am also unable to craft heavenly divine artifacts. Qin Yu also felt pity for Uncle Fu in his heart. Not having a soul was indeed a very large restriction. Uncle Fu, you should rest first. I will set up the formation array now. Qin Yu said with a smile. He then started floating in the air. After that, Qin Yu's hands were like illusions. Rays of light flew out from Qin Yu's hands. At the same time, there were also countless runes, seals, and symbols. The sparkling divine spiritual stones suddenly flew out from Qin Yu's hands. 1, 2, 3, 24. A total of 24 low-quality divine spiritual stones flew out in all directions of Mount Biwichu. Each and every one of the low-quality divine spiritual stones were radiating a magnificent brilliance. Qin Yu, who was setting up the formation array, gracefully took out numerous divine spiritual seals. His speed was both slow and fast. The amount of divine energy contained in his seals was both large and small. He cleverly made the entire formation array work together. This formation array was merely a level 1 formation array. It was merely a slightly more powerful illusion formation array among level 1 formation arrays. The Black Dragon Pool was actually a beautiful lake with a circumference of 100 miles. There was not a single fish living in this beautiful lake. It was a completely desolate place of life. There were only some aquatic plants growing in this lake. Beside the Black Dragon Pool was a luxurious and tall palace. This palace was the Black Dragon Palace. Surrounding the Black Dragon Palace were 3 other palaces. These 3 palaces were the palaces of the 3 great experts under the command of the leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon. In terms of liveliness, those 3 palaces were much livelier than the Black Dragon Palace. That was because there were only a couple servants in the Black Dragon Palace. Those servants were merely there to maintain the cleanliness of the Black Dragon Palace. Finally, Lord Black Dragon himself had not appeared in the Black Dragon Palace for a very long time. The 3 great experts under Lord Black Dragon were Xiong He, Daoist Lu Su and Mei Ji. Other than these 3 great experts, the majority of the Black Dragon's subordinates have never seen Black Dragon himself. Where exactly was Black Dragon himself? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Is he dead? No one dared to ask. The only ones who knew the answer were the 3 lords. The Black Dragon Pool was extremely powerful. Naturally, they had a lot of men under them. Any one of the 3 lords could easily take out 100,000 men. If one were to compare the power of the 3 lords, then Xiong He would be the most powerful. Lord Bear Palace. This was the palace among the 3 palaces that belonged to Xiong He. Xiong He controlled over half of the people in the Black Dragon Pool. The majority of the matters were decided by him. However, in the past couple months, Xiong He was somewhat vexed. That was because several tens of his subordinates had disappeared for no reason at all. If they were killed by someone, he, Xiong He, would not care about it and would immediately dispatch people to take revenge. But he couldn't find out who killed his men. In the main hall of the Tyrant Bear Palace, a sturdy, dark-faced man who was nearly 3 meters tall sat on the main hall. He supported his chin with one hand and frowned slightly. A clear sound of footsteps could be heard as a black-clothed woman quickly walked in. Seeing the dark-faced man's gaze sweep over, the black-clothed woman hurriedly said, "Sir, after our investigation, we finally found a suspicious point," said Xiong He indifferently. The black-clothed woman said respectfully, "Although these 40-plus people were separated into 3 groups to handle matters, they all had a common point. That is, they were all heading toward the south to handle matters. This subordinate dispatched people to travel along the way. Ultimately, they discovered a matter." Xiong He snorted. His gaze swept toward the black-clothed woman. "About several thousand miles south of our Black Dragon Pool's headquarters, there is a small mountain. I had dispatched people to investigate along the way. However, when they arrived at that small mountain, they discovered a matter. The people that entered that small mountain would get lost in that small mountain and never come out again. Because of this, 3 more people from the investigation team went missing in that small mountain." After the black-clothed woman finished saying those words, she quietly waited for Xiong He's orders. A small mountain. Xiong He straightened his body and looked at the black-clothed woman. "What is its name?" The black-clothed woman frowned and said, "Sir, the investigation team returned and reported a very strange matter. Normally, we would not care about that small mountain and would only consider it as a nameless mountain. However, when they went to investigate this time around, they discovered a stele erected at the foot of the mountain. On the stele were 3 words. Mount bewitch you. Mount bewitch you." Xiong He slightly frowned. "Sir, that stele appeared to be newly erected." Combined with the fact that the entire mountain possesses a strange ability to trap people, this subordinate guesses that there might be a certain person or a certain small power that has occupied that mountain. Furthermore, that person has set up a formation around that Mount Bewitch You. The black-clothed woman spoke out her thoughts. Xiong He snorted coldly. A certain person or a certain power. They are truly daring. Could it be that they do not know that the surroundings of our Black Dragon Pool do not permit any powers to interfere? The Black Dragon Pool was extremely tyrannical. There was simply not a single power that existed at the edge of their sphere of influence. There were in the past. However, those powers were all eradicated by the Black Dragon Pool. How could they allow others to sleep beside their bed? They actually dared to trap my people. Immediately release them. Very well. A.e., have your subordinates find people proficient in formations and some astute people. Have them break the formation of that mount bewitch you. After that, kill the person who set up that formation," said Xiong He coldly. The black-clothed woman said respectfully, The Black Dragon Pool had a lot of subordinates. Naturally, there would be people proficient in all kinds of fields. Lady E, please rest assured. This subordinate will definitely kill all of the enemies on Mount Bewitch You. Lu Qian bowed to the black-clothed woman and gave his promise. Qian, you do things with propriety. However, you must be careful this time around. The might of the formation on Mount Bewitch You ought to be quite powerful. You must not repeat the mistakes of others. The black-clothed woman said coldly. Lu Qian was extremely respectful. After leaving the headquarters of the Black Dragon Pool, Lu Qian brought 20 subordinates and rushed toward Mount Bewitch You. The speed of this group of subordinates could be considered to be fast. After spending 2 days, they finally arrived at the outer region of Mount Bewitch You. Lu Qian waved his hand and ordered his subordinates. Lu Qian was born in the Divine Realm. After that, he lived in the Sealfield village. However, Lu Qian felt that the amount of divine spiritual stones he had to pay every 1,000 years in the Sealfield village was not enough for him to cultivate. Thus he entered the Black Dragon Pool. After so many years of struggle, he managed to make his way through the Black Dragon Pool. He could be considered to be a low-level captain-like character. Last time, his childhood sweetheart Ziyun and Xing Yuan became husband and wife. Faced with this matter, Lu Qian did not use martial strength to deal with Ziyun and Xing Yuan. It wasn't that he didn't want to. Rather, it was that he was unable to see through Xing Yuan's good friend Qin Yu and the other two. Lu Qian was such a cautious person. He had never believed in feelings. In his heart, authority and strength were the most important things. Feelings were merely empty. Lord Lu, the words Mount Bewitch You are written on the steel. Among the 20 subordinates, a middle-aged man spoke. Lu Qian lightly nodded his head. Everyone, this place is Mount Bewitch You. The entire Mount Bewitch You is covered by a formation. Brother Sanyong, you are the most proficient in formations among us. You should go and have a look. A middle-aged man with a goatee walked over. He casually picked up a few stones from the ground and threw them into the interior of Mount Bewitch You. Everyone was able to clearly see that those stones naturally rolled onto a stone on the mountain. There's no change. Brother Sanyong, do you know what kind of formation this is? Lu Qian asked. The goatee man did not say anything. Instead, he shot out a ray of divine energy into Mount Bewitch You. An enormous light screen immediately appeared on the entire Mount Bewitch You. At the same time, countless densely packed runes, seals and symbols floated on top of the light screen. The goatee man's expression became somewhat solemn. Lord Lu, if my guess is correct, this formation should be a formation from the divine realm. Furthermore, it should be a relatively profound formation from the divine realm. Lu Qian felt that the situation was bad. He couldn't help but look at the other people in the group. Lord Lu, what Brother Sanyong said is correct. This formation is indeed very profound. The other people also nodded their heads in agreement. Divine Realms Formation Books. After being in the Black Dragon Pool for so many years, I have only seen a single golden scroll. Based on my comprehension of formations in the lower realm, I have studied that set of formation books and finally gained some understanding. However, it's still not enough to break this formation. The goatee man said with a solemn expression. Lu Qian and the others did not know that at this moment, Qin Yu was using his divine sense to observe them. With the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, Qin Yu was able to extend his divine sense to a distance of 1,000 meters. At this moment, Qin Yu was standing on top of a tree on Mount Bewitch You. He was only 300 meters away from Lu Qian and the others. Formation books. And a single golden scroll. At the beginning, when Qin Yu heard the conversation between those people, he had thought that this Sanyong was very powerful. But now, he heard that this guy had only seen a single scroll of formation books from the divine realm. Lord Lu, I can only use a stupid method to sense the might of this formation. This Sanyang looked to Lu Qian. Lord Lu, use a long rope to tie my waist. You all stay outside the mountain. I will go in by myself first. After 10 breaths of time, no matter what happens, you all can directly pull me out. Lu Qian thought for a moment and nodded his head. I've really come in. Haha. The rope is something that can break. A smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Soon after, he floated down like a gentle wind. Uncle Fu instantly arrived beside Qin Yu. The two of them, one in front and one behind, were rushing toward the foot of the mountain. Remember, no matter what happens in 10 breaths of time, you must pull me out. Sanyang instructed once again. Brother Sanyang, please be at ease. The others immediately guaranteed. At this moment, Sanyang, who had a rope tied around his waist, entered Mount Biwichu with ease. Right after Sanyang entered Mount Biwichu, he felt that the surrounding scenery had completely changed. What a powerful formation! The person who set up this formation must be a formation grandmaster of the divine realm. Sanyang sighed in his heart. Books on array formations were still very precious in the god realm. How could ordinary people possibly see them, much less research them? This Sanyang did not know that this formation was merely a level 1 formation. 10 breaths of time is up. Why didn't you pull me out? Sanyang was a bit puzzled. Pull me back. Sanyang shouted loudly. At this moment, Sanyang did not know that he was unable to go out by himself. Merely, no matter how much he shouted, the rope tied around his waist did not have any reaction. Sanyang turned his head around and looked at the rope that connected him to the outside world. His expression immediately changed and he muttered, No, it's an illusion. It's not real. I can't believe it, I can't believe it. Lu Qian and the others fiercely pulled. However, they only managed to pull out half of the rope. The rope was cut by someone. Upon seeing this, Lu Qian's expression changed. Brother Sanyang has also fallen into the formation. What should we do now? Immediately, some people started to become anxious. Lu Qian, since you've come to my territory, how could I not invite you over? A voice suddenly sounded from Mount Biwichu. Lu Qian and the others immediately looked toward Mount Biwichu in shock. The misty radiance of Mount Biwichu appeared once again. Numerous and densely packed talisman seals and symbols were floating on the light barrier. At the same time, the light barrier suddenly expanded. The range of the light barrier increased by 100 meters. Immediately, Lu Qian and the others were covered by the formation while they were stunned. Lu Qian, oh Lu Qian, you've brought someone who only knows the surface of the divine realm's formations to break my formation. Truly, the range of the divine realm's formations will change according to the amount of energy. You all don't even know about the most basic point. Qin Yu retrieved the divine energy that he poured into the formation. The range of the formation immediately returned to its original state. At this moment, the energy of the formation was completely supplied by the divine spiritual stones. As for Lu Qian and the others, they were already completely trapped within the formation. Ah! Let me out! Bastard, let me out! At a certain location in Mount Biwichu, a blond old man was crazily shouting. He had already been trapped here for several months. At this moment, Lu Qian walked past him. However, he did not discover that crazy old man at all. Right now, there are several tens of people testing the formation on Mount Biwichu. However, it's still not enough. Qin Yu stood on top of a tree and looked at those people who had lost their heads out of fear. He muttered to himself, "These people's strengths are relatively weak." However, after a period of time, the experts of the Black Dragon Pool would likely not be able to sit still anymore. At that time, I would be able to test out powerful formations. Chapter 513. Biwichu. In front of Qin Yu's wooden house, there was a shallow pond. Qin Yu had rolled up his trousers and was standing in the middle of the pond. Barefoot, he was stepping on the slippery stones at the bottom of the pond. As for Qin Yu, he was looking at the fishes in the pond with his eyes wide open. Both of his hands were stretched out as if he was ready to catch the fishes at any time. Ha ha! Seeing Qin Yu acting like this from the shore, Uncle Fu also started to laugh happily. Qin Yu did not use his divine sense to lock onto the fishes in the pond. Instead, he used the most ancient and most primitive method. He used his eyes to look at the fishes and then used his hands to catch them. As Qin Yu caught the fishes again and again, the shining white pond water splashed up. Ha! I don't believe that I won't be able to catch a single one. Qin Yu rolled up his sleeves. Actually, Qin Yu only needed to think about it and this set of divine armor would automatically roll up. However, Qin Yu felt as if he had returned to his childhood and was enjoying this kind of fun. Master, the fishes of the divine realm are not the same as the fishes of the mortal realm. Those fishes are all demonic beasts. Although they are low-level demonic beasts of the divine realm and their attack power is very weak, they are also intelligent. If you continue to catch them like this, it will be very hard for you to catch them. Uncle Fu reminded from afar. Hearing Uncle Fu's voice, the fishes in the pond jumped out of the pond and then scuttled back into the water. Clearly, they were trying to anger Qin Yu. Too cunning. Qin Yu slowly exhaled in anger. Then he stared at those fishes with lightning-like eyes. Both of his hands turned into afterimages as he fiercely plunged them into the pond water. The fishes immediately scuttled away. The fishes were incomparably nimble and slippery in the water. Qin Yu was unable to catch them at all. Good, good, good. Qin Yu said the word good 3 times in a row. Those fishes were actually unceasingly jumping out of the pond water from the other side. Humph, humph. Qin Yu smiled brilliantly. The water in the pool suddenly disappeared, and the fishes that were originally swimming in the pool fell onto the rocks at the bottom of the pool. Without water, even if they were fishes from the god realm, they could only move with great difficulty. Let's see how you're going to escape this time. Qin Yu walked over with a smile and grabbed one of them with each hand. Those fish widened their eyes and glared at Qin Yu. Master, you're using the Zhonglan's realm to catch fish? Uncle Fu opened his eyes wide. Qin Yu turned around and smiled brightly at Uncle Fu. Then he looked at the 2 fish in his hands and said, Humph, you are still arrogant in front of me. Be careful that I don't cook you. The 2 fishes immediately became anxious. Spare my life, spare my life. The 2 fishes actually spoke human language, and their voices were incomparably clear. Qin Yu was stunned for a while before he came to his senses. This was a fish from the god realm, not a fish from the mortal world. Even those who had just ascended needed to stabilize their bodies to withstand the god realm's restrictions. No matter how weak the god realm's fishes were, it was natural for them to be able to speak human language. Do not resist now, otherwise I'll roast you. Qin Yu threatened. Don't resist, don't resist. A green fish and a pink fish said repeatedly. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. With an intention, these 2 fishes were sucked into the Zhonglan's realm. Never had I expected that Master would have such a childish heart, Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qin Yu waved his hand, and the pool water that had been sucked into the Zhonglan's realm was sent back by Qin Yu. Qin Yu walked onto the shore. His rolled-up trousers and sleeves also automatically returned to their original state. Qin Yu no longer had the relaxed smile on his face. Master, what's wrong? Uncle Fu had already sensed the change in Qin Yu's mood. Qin Yu's gaze was misty. He said indifferently, Childish heart, I also want to have it. Unfortunately, a long time ago I no longer have it. Do you think that I catch fishes for fun? Uncle Fu, I would usually not allow myself to rest by myself. If I'm not training, I'm deducing formation arrays or I'm accompanying my brothers. Very rarely would I be by myself and not do anything. Do you know why? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu shook his head. Qin Yu laughed at himself. You don't understand. That's because if I'm by myself and not doing anything, I'll think about a lot of things. My mind will think of many things, and the one I think of the most is Lee. I want to see her, yet I can't. I want to love her, yet I can only endure it. Day after day, year after year, 10,000 years after 10,000 years. I've suppressed everything in my heart for so many years. Qin Yu held on to his chest. Heavy, very heavy, very heavy. Qin Yu raised his head and looked to the sky. A smile appeared on his face. A smile can make one feel slightly relaxed. Doing some childish things can also make one feel relaxed. I'm not a person who likes to smile. However, sometimes I'll let myself smile. I'm not a person who has a childish heart. However, I'll still do some childish things. This way, my heart will be able to feel a little better. That heavy feeling will lessen a little. The corners of Qin Yu's eyes were slightly moist. However, Qin Yu laughed again. His eyes narrowed again. Usually, I would be constantly deducing the array Dao or training. I would never let my mind rest. However, in these days when I stopped to rest, my mind would start to uncontrollably overthink. Qin Yu shook his head in a self-mocking manner. Uncle Fu looked at Qin Yu from the side. He didn't know what to say. Haha, don't be like this. Actually, I'm still very happy. Qin Yu smiled to Uncle Fu. Compared to when I was in the mortal realm, my current strength is many times stronger than before. Furthermore, I've also entered the divine realm. Li Er is also in the divine realm. I'm even able to sense Li Er's existence. Qin Yu pointed to the north. That's right, she's over there. Qin Yu retrieved his finger. He smiled to Uncle Fu and said, I've already been here for so many years. What's the point of working hard for a bit more? The path that I've walked, I will continue to walk forward. No one will be able to stop me. Qin Yu's voice was dull. There was no imposing manner. On his face, there was even a slight smile. However, Uncle Fu was able to sense that confidence that came from the bottom of his heart. Master, no one will be able to stop you. Uncle Fu nodded and said with certainty. Ha! Qin Yu suddenly shouted. He was filled with vitality. Uncle Fu, let's go. Let's go to the Zhonglan's realm and see what those two fish look like after they turn into humans. Inside the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, Kurowa's residence. This time around, Qin Yu directly placed the two fish outside of Kurowa's residence. At this moment, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu had just arrived at this place. They immediately heard the sound of lively conversation. Furthermore, there were quite a few people here. Wu Lan, Wu He, you two are also here. Qin Yu was surprised to see Wu Lan and Wu He standing together with Kuro. Immediately, the 5 people in the courtyard immediately looked to Qin Yu and Uncle Fu. Big brother, where did these 2 little girls come from? Kuro immediately asked. Only then did Qin Yu look to the 2 girls. These 2 girls were very petite and exquisite. Their height was estimated to be about 160 centimeters. At this moment, the 2 girls were blinking their eyes and excitedly looking to Qin Yu. Lord Qin Yu. These 2 women bowed to Qin Yu. The 2 of them were extremely excited. In the divine realm, ordinary fish like them would not be able to move after leaving the pond water unless they passed the divine tribulation. However, in the Zhonglan's realm, without the restriction of the divine realm, they were able to take human form. What are your names? Qin Yu asked. The big guy Wu He immediately said. Master, the one wearing green clothes is called Lu Shui. The one wearing pink clothes is called Hong Yu. Lord Qin Yu didn't ask you. Lu Shui and Hong Yu immediately shouted. Then they happily looked to Qin Yu. Lord Qin Yu, I am called Lu Shui Hong Yu. She is called Hong Yu Lu Shui. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. With these 2 chattering lively girls, even Kuro, Wu Lan and them started to smile more. Qin Yu couldn't help but think that his decision was indeed correct. Qin Yu stood on top of the tree and looked to his surroundings. Master, the Black Dragon Pool has already sent people to attack us 4 times in succession. The first 3 times they were easily trapped by us. However, this time around they have already broken through half of our formation array. Uncle Fu said from below. Qin Yu nodded. Rest assured, this person's strength in formation arrays is not that great. It's merely a level 1 formation array. It's even better if they can break through it. With their speed of breaking through formation arrays, by the time they break through this formation array, my second formation array would have already been set up. The Black Dragon Pool seemed to be truly enraged. They sent one formation array expert after another to break through Qin Yu's formation arrays. However, in Qin Yu's eyes, these formation array experts were truly too weak. Those who knew a bit of the Divine Realm's formation arrays were considered formation array experts. This was purely laughable to Qin Yu. However, those people still possessed some strength. They actually managed to break through 2 of Qin Yu's formation arrays in succession. These 2 formation arrays were both relatively weak level 2 formation arrays. As for Qin Yu, he was finally going to unleash his ruthlessness. This time around, Qin Yu was planning to set up a relatively weak level 2 formation array. A killing formation. In the past, they were all trapping formations that did not possess any destructive power. Thus, they would allow his opponents sufficient time to slowly break through the formation arrays. Lord Gong's son, please. Lu Qian was respectfully following behind a green-clothed middle-aged man. Last time, Lu Qian was trapped by Qin Yu's illusion array. Fortunately, Qin Yu did not use any killing moves on him and only trapped him. Later on, when a formation array expert managed to break through the formation array, Lu Qian managed to keep his life. This Gong Sun Jin, Lord Gong's son, could be considered as the number 1 formation array expert in the Xiong Palace. His status was much higher than Lu Qian's. Furthermore, he had already broken through 2 of Qin Yu's formation arrays in succession. This caused Lord Xiong He to greatly reward this Gong Sun Jin. However, every time Gong Sun Jin managed to break through a formation array with great difficulty, Qin Yu would succeed in setting up a new formation array. This also caused the Black Dragon Pool to be unable to capture Qin Yu. You all stay outside and watch. Be careful. I will go in and break the formation array. Gong Sun Jin said indifferently. He briefly inspected the formation array. Merely, the result of this inspection caused him to hesitate for a long time. However, after a long time, Gong Sun Jin still stepped into the formation array. Lu Qian and his several subordinates only saw Gong Sun Jin continuously forming hand seals within the formation array. However, Gong Sun Jin was only able to persist for a few breaths of time. Bang! Overflowing black flames suddenly bombarded Gong Sun Jin's body. There was even a trace of white flames mixed within the black flames. Boom! Before the dumbstruck expressions of Lu Qian and the others, Gong Sun Jin's entire body was like a leaf being burned to ashes. Just like that, his entire body was incinerated. Run! Quickly run! Lu Qian would never forget the time when the formation array's area of coverage had suddenly increased greatly. This time around, Lu Qian was very lucky. Qin Yu did not kill him. Instead, he stood on top of a tree and watched as Lu Qian and the others fled in panic like stray dogs. They addressed you as Lord Gong's son. However, you truly do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. You wasted so much time to break through my first 2 trapping arrays. The speed at which I set up my formation array was faster than you. Could it be that you are still unable to determine the difference in strength between us? Qin Yu sighed. Destruction was easier than creation. To set up a formation array, one must perfect it from all aspects. As for destruction, one only needed to destroy some of the important areas and the formation array would naturally be destroyed. Qin Yu was faster than Gong Sun Jin in setting up a formation array. The disparity between the 2 of them was too obvious. Lord Xiong Palace. Gong Sun died. Xiong Hei's nearly 3-meter-tall body emitted a frightening domineering aura. His eyes were opened wide like fists as he stared at the trembling Lu Qian below. How are you still alive? Lu Qian sensed Lord Xianghei's anger. He was so scared that he started to tremble. Big brother Xiong, I've heard that you fell down on a small mountain this time. Many people died. A seductive red-clothed woman walked in with light steps. Little sister Meiji, you cannot speak of big brother Xianghei like that. Big brother Xianghei was careless, although he had only lost 7 or 8 times. A handsome man with skin as white as snow walked in. These 2 people were precisely the other 2 great experts under Lord Black Dragon of the Black Dragon Pool, Meiji and Taoist Lu Su. Seeing how Meiji and Taoist Lu Su treated him like this, Xianghei was unable to refrain his anger. Meiji Lu Su, that man is merely relying on his powerful formation arrays. I shall see how his formation arrays will not be destroyed under the distortion of the space energy. A single force can defeat 10 techniques. This heavenly divine artifact of mine is not something to be trifled with. Xianghei opened his eyes wide. He shouted angrily, bring the troops. I shall personally go and trample Mount Bewitchu. Chapter 5:14. Yes, sir. The black-clothed woman, bowed and accepted the order. Soon after, immediately left the palace hall and began to mobilize her troops. She gathered a large amount of troops to open up a path for Lord Xianghei. Taoist Lu Su and Meiji were both looking at Xianghei with smiles on their faces. The handsome Taoist Lu Su said enthusiastically, with Big Brother Xianghei personally setting out and this heavenly divine artifact personally bestowed by Lord Black Dragon, a mere Mount Bewitchu would definitely be nothing difficult. This little brother is also very bored here in the Black Dragon Pool. How about I follow Big Brother Xianghei to the Black Dragon Pool and observe Big Brother Xianghei's might from the side? Big Brother Lu's words are interesting. I'll go with you. When the time comes, I can watch Big Brother Xiong display his might from the side, Meiji said sweetly as she gently swayed her sleeves. Xianghei walked down from the main hall and stood beside Meiji and Taoist Lu Su. That nearly 3 meters tall figure caused Meiji and Taoist Lu Su to have no choice but to raise their heads to look at him. Meiji Lu Su, since you 2 want to go and take a look, then come with me. Xianghei slightly raised his head. The ominous glint in his eyes passed through the entrance of the palace hall and shot toward the south. Humph, Mount Bewitchu. After that, Xianghei walked out of the palace hall in large strides and headed toward the outside. In just a short while, nearly 10,000 people had gathered outside the Tyrant Bear Palace. To the Black Dragon Pool, 10,000 people was only a small portion. However, when the number of people exceeded 10,000, it looked like a sea of people. Those gods were discussing below, and it was very noisy. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy footsteps sounded. Xianghei's imposing figure appeared on the stage. He swept his gaze downward. After hearing the reprimands from some of the leaders of the Black Dragon Pool, the nearly 10,000 troops immediately grew silent. Everyone was respectfully looking at Lord Xianghei. We pay our respects to Lord Xianghei. Nearly 10,000 people knelt down on one knee at the same time, their voices resounding. Meiji and Taoist Lu Su had also flown onto the stage. Merely, the 2 of them stood on either side of Xianghei. Meiji lightly smiled and said, Big Brother Xiong, what an impressive display. Xianghei simply ignored Meiji. Instead, he waved his hand and shouted, Set off! Immediately, the nearly 10,000 men split into groups and began to march toward the south in an orderly manner. The leader of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon, had not appeared for many years. As such, Xianghei's status in the Black Dragon Pool could be said to be number 1. If he were to personally make a move, how could his extravagance be small? Xianghei was sitting on the recliner contentedly. 4 robust men with figures comparable to Xianghei were carrying him from below. In terms of strength, these 4 muscular men were all high-level deities. As for Lu Su and Meiji, who had come to watch the show, they were also being carried forward in reclining chairs. It's just that the 4 high-level deities below Lu Su and Mei Ji are all beautiful women. After traveling for close to 3 days, this army finally arrived at Mount Biwichu. Qin Yu was standing on top of a certain tree. He was looking at the long line of troops in the distance. The troops in the front had just arrived at Mount Biwichu. As for the troops in the middle and the troops in the back, there was still quite a bit of distance between them. What a grand display! Qin Yu had a slight smile on his face. He took a step forward and arrived at the edge of a cliff. Qin Yu sat on the edge of the cliff with Fu Bo standing behind him. "Master, it looks like there are nearly 10,000 of them." Uncle Fu took a glance and guessed the approximate number. When facing a great formation, numbers are useless. No matter how many people come, they will all die. I hope that the leader of the Black Dragon Pool will not be hot-headed. Otherwise, if too many people die, it would not be my intention. Qin Yu said with a light smile. "Uncle Fu, do you think this killing formation of mine will be able to stop them?" Uncle Fu shook his head and said with a smile. "Although the killing formation is gone with its attack power, I reckon it will not be able to kill heavenly deity level experts. As for this time, I reckon that the heavenly deity level experts of the Black Dragon Pool should have arrived." The troops in the front had a total of 2,000 men. The troops in the back had a total of 2,000 men. As for the troops in the middle, there were nearly 6,000 men. As for Xiong He, Mei Ji and Lu Su, they were all in the middle of the army. By the time the entire army arrived at the foot of Mount Biwichu, Qin Yu had already waited for close to an hour. All of the troops were on the ground. However, at this moment, a robust man flew out from the crowd of close to 10,000 men. He was wearing a black battle armor and had a ferocious face. The tyrannical aura emitted from his body could be felt from far away. Flying. As expected, heavenly deity level experts have arrived. Qin Yu also stood up. When faced with heavenly deity level experts, Qin Yu was unable to act as casually as before. However, right at the moment when Qin Yu stood up, 2 more people flew out from behind that robust man wearing the black battle armor. 3 heavenly deities, they truly think highly of me. Qin Yu also had a trace of excitement in his heart. 3 heavenly deities, I ought to be able to test out a lot of formation arrays. Right at the moment when Qin Yu was treating the 3 heavenly deities as white mice to test out his formation arrays, the 3 heavenly deities stood up. Xiong He was in the front. Taoist Lu Su and Mei Ji were behind him. "People of Mount Biwichu, listen up. I am Lord Xiong He of the Black Dragon Pool. If you are sensible, then obediently come out from Mount Biwichu and allow yourself to be captured. Otherwise, do not blame me for being vicious and merciless." Xiong He's face was filled with disdain. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su glanced at each other. "Xiong He, never heard of you." A clear and bright voice sounded. A figure flew out from Mount Biwichu and stood in the sky above Mount Biwichu. Seeing that someone had actually flown out, Xiong He's expression immediately changed. Even Mei Ji and Lu Su no longer had the relaxed expression they had earlier. Instead, they had a serious expression on their faces. Merely, the gaze that they looked to Xiong He with contained a trace of ridicule. "Ah, it's a heavenly deity. It's actually a heavenly deity. This time around there's going to be a great battle." The 10,000 troops of the Black Dragon Pool started to clamor. When they saw that their enemy was actually a heavenly deity, the atmosphere immediately flared up. Even Xiong He no longer had the domineering aura that he had at the beginning. How did he turn into a heavenly deity? Lu Qian was among the crowd. He looked to Qin Yu, who was in the sky above Mount Biwichu, with a stupefied expression. Lu Qian still remembered the appearance of the person in front of him very clearly. This person was Xing Yuan's friend, that person called Qin Yu. "Handsome little brother, I am called Mei Ji. That big guy is our Black Dragon Pool's Lord Xiong He. This is Taoist Lu Su. Little brother, what is your name?" Mei Ji said sweetly. "This lowly one is Qin Yu." Qin Yu directly said his name. The name Qin Yu would bring about a lot of troubles in the immortal, devil and demon realm. However, in the divine realm, there was no need for him to hide it. Xiong He frowned. He then coldly humphed and said, Qin Yu, never had I expected that you're also a heavenly deity. Since you're a heavenly deity and have occupied Mount Bewitchu, our black dragon pool would definitely be magnanimous and not care about it. However, your conduct in this period of time is opposing our black dragon pool. Speak, how do you plan to satisfy our black dragon pool? Xiong He, Lu Su and Mei Ji were all low-level heavenly deities. Heavenly deities in the divine realm were extremely rare. Generally, all of the major powers would try to rope in heavenly deity experts. Xiong He was simply unable to determine whether Qin Yu was by himself or if he possessed a powerful background. The Black Dragon Pool could be considered to be a major power within the Yuchi city. However, when compared to Yuchi City and the other major cities, they were much weaker. Satisfy you all. That's right, my formations will definitely satisfy you all. Qin Yu said with a smile on his face. Xiong He's expression grew cold. This is the method you plan to satisfy us. Killing intent began to burst forth from Xiong He's eyes. Qin Yu smiled and said, That's right. Xiong He, Meiji, Lu Su, let me remind you all. I have set up a killing formation in the outermost region of Mount Bewitchu. I have also set up a killing formation in the central region of Mount Bewitchu. You all are welcome to try and break through it. After he finished saying those words, Qin Yu rushed into the mountain forest of Mount Bewitchu and disappeared from everyone's sight. Meiji, Lu Su, the two of you stand to the side. Xiong He had a gloomy expression. He extended his hand and a 4-meter-long scarlet-colored spiked club suddenly appeared in his hand. Dark green-colored heavenly divine energy was transmitted into the spiked club from Xiong He's hand. The spiked club started to tremble. Meiji and Lu Su glanced at each other. Big brother Xiong, with that mountain crusher in our hands, we will definitely be able to easily capture that Qin Yu, said Meiji with a smile. As for Xiong He himself, he took a step forward and rushed into the killing formation. Right after he entered the killing formation, masses of black flames rushed toward him. They just so happened to envelop Xiong He from all directions. However, to a low-level heavenly deity, the divine flames did not possess any harm. "Yeah!" Xiong He suddenly roared. The space surrounding his body started to distort. Xiong He held the spiked club with his thick hands. Dark green-colored heavenly divine energy was flowing through the surface of the spiked club. Only by pouring heavenly divine energy into a heavenly divine artifact would one be able to unleash the greatest attack power of a heavenly divine artifact. Mountain Crusher. Xiong He's spiked club ruthlessly smashed onto the ground of Mount Bewitchu. Qin Yu, who was on top of Mount Bewitchu and saw this scene from afar, was shocked to discover that the entire Mount Bewitchu slightly trembled. Even Qin Yu, who was on top of Mount Bewitchu, felt the trembling. However, what about Xiong He's surroundings? With Xiong He as the center, the mountain rocks within a circumference of 10 meters all turned into fine powder. As for the mountain within a circumference of over 100 meters, it cracked open. At the same time, the formation foundation that Qin Yu had set up in this region was also destroyed. Boom! The spiked club carried an enormous force. As if it was tearing apart space, it ruthlessly smashed onto the mountain. The mountain rocks within a circumference of over 100 meters all cracked open. Boom! 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 Like an earthquake, the mountain shook several tens of times in succession. The formation foundation of Mount Bewitchu was destroyed. The killing array dissipated. This Xiong He, how could his heavenly divine artifact be this powerful? Qin Yu suddenly stood up. He looked to Xiong He, who was holding onto the enormous spiked club at the foot of the mountain. Master, when a divine artifact is poured with divine energy, its might is much greater than when it was in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Using the same principle, when a heavenly divine artifact is poured with heavenly divine energy, its might would be the greatest," said Uncle Fu respectfully. At this moment, Xiong Hei was holding onto the enormous spiked club with one hand. He was walking toward the top of Mount Biwichu step by step. Each of his steps caused the ground to tremble. The baleful aura on Xiong Hei's fierce and ferocious face was even more berserk than before. Chapter 5:15. Xiong Hei, 3 steps ahead of you is the next formation array. If you're able to break through it, then you'll be qualified to taste my strongest slaughtering array. Qin Yu's clear voice resounded through Mount Biwichu. Xiong Hei raised his head and looked to the peak of Mount Biwichu. He arrogantly roared, "Qin Yu, hide yourself properly on the mountain. After this lord breaks through your formation, I will use this heavenly divine artifact to smash your head and destroy your true spirit." After he finished saying those words, Xiong Hei once again took large strides forward. Mount Biwichu was close to 2,000 meters tall. Qin Yu was close to the peak of the mountain. Once Xiong Hei stepped into the formation, due to the formation, Xiong Hei would not be able to see Qin Yu. However, the formation was set up by Qin Yu. Thus, Qin Yu was able to clearly see each and every movement Xiong Hei made within the formation. "Destroy my true spirit," Qin Yu muttered. Qin Yu knew very well that the true spirit was one's consciousness. Uncle Fu said respectfully, "Master, for ordinary deities or those weaker than them, the true spirit will dissipate. Once the soul is destroyed, the true spirit will also dissipate. That is because the current true spirit is too weak. It is simply impossible for it to exist by itself. However, once the soul reaches the nascent soul realm and reaches the heavenly deity realm, even if the soul is destroyed, the true spirit will still be able to exist by itself. The prerequisite is that the true spirit will not be attacked by others. So what if the true spirit is present? Could it be that it can still be revived?" Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu replied respectfully, "If the true spirit is present, although it is very difficult to revive, there are still precious medicinal pellets in the divine realm. Those medicinal pellets are capable of reviving people. Apart from that, Empyrean-level experts are also capable of reviving people who only have their true spirit left." Qin Yu shook his head, smiled and said, "Empyrean? The legendary Empyrean? How many people have actually seen one before?" Actually, it is not only Empyreans. A long time ago, Old Master was still in the divine realm. At that time, there was an extremely glorious God King in the divine realm. She was known as the God King of Life. This God King of Life possessed the ability to revive people who only have their true spirits left. Uncle Fu replied respectfully, "Oh God King of Life. He actually has the ability to resurrect people. Could it be that there are no restrictions on him using this ability?" Qin Yu said in surprise. Even the remaining true spirits could be revived. This was something that defied the heavens. How could there be no limits to doing this? There shouldn't be any restrictions. The Old Master said that in the entire divine realm, among the God Kings, no one could compare to the God King of Life in terms of saving lives. Uncle Fu sighed. "It's a pity that the God King of Life is dead." "How did he die?" Qin Yu asked curiously. "How could a God King level expert die so easily?" Or, Uncle Fu said, "In the divine realm, every 6 billion years, there will be a battle that covers the entire divine realm. Under normal circumstances, it is very rare for divine king level experts to fall in a battle. However, there have been cases in history." Qin Yu nodded slightly. "Uncle Fu, how long until the next war?" From Qin Yu's point of view, once a war broke out, if he became a master craftsman, then his benefits would be even greater. Uncle Fu said respectfully, "There should be more than 1 billion years. It's been too long." Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly shined. At this moment, Xiong Hei had already entered the formation array in the middle region of Mount Biwichu. That formation array was an illusion formation array. Faced with this illusion formation array, Xiong Hei was caught unprepared. Haha, this stupid bear. It's extremely difficult for him to break through an illusion formation with brute force. Qin Yu smiled as he looked to Xiong He in the formation array. Mei Ji and Taoist Lu Su, who were standing in the air, were also puzzled. Why is Xiong He always circling in that 3 steps radius? Furthermore, he's smashing the ground non-stop. If he's smashing the ground within 3 steps radius, how large of an area would he be able to destroy? Mei Ji frowned. In the entire Black Dragon pool, the person most proficient in formation arrays was none other than Taoist Lu Su. Even that Gong Sun Jin would frequently consult Taoist Lu Su. Taoist Lu Su's strength in formation arrays was already at the peak of level 2 formation arrays. Merely, the research on formation arrays was truly too complicated. If one did not have anyone to guide them, then it was very easy for one to lose the direction of one's deduction in this vast ocean of formation arrays and enter the wrong path. Not everyone had the books left behind by the craftsman god Cheho Yuan to carefully guide them. Xiong He ought to have entered into an illusion formation array. The current him likely still doesn't know that he's circling around. Furthermore, he also doesn't know that he's smashing the same ground. Taoist Lu Su was still staring at Xiong He in the Great Formation Array. Indeed, it was as Taoist Lu Su had guessed. Xiong He simply did not know that he was smashing the same ground. At this moment, what he saw was a vast expanse of earth. He did not care about anything else and only smashed the ground. Every time he smashed the enormous spiked club, he would create a large crater. Every time he ran, he would smash another crater. Just like this, he continued to smash the ground, smashing the ground over 100 times. Huff huff. Xiong He was gasping for breath. His spiked club was a heavy attack weapon. Furthermore, every time he smashed it, he would imbue it with a large amount of heavenly divine energy. Otherwise, how could he possibly smash the stones of the divine realm to such a large area? After smashing the ground over 100 times in succession, Xiong He had consumed too much of his heavenly divine energy. What's going on? The blue veins on Xiong He's forehead were bulging. His gaze would occasionally look to the east and then to the north. Formation array. I'm actually still in a formation array. I've smashed the ground several hundred times. More than half of the entire Mount Bewitch has been smashed. Why is the formation array still not broken? Xiong He looked to the boundless prairie in his surroundings and grew a bit angry. When faced with an illusion array, the most effective method to break the formation array is. Xiong He retrieved his spiked club mountain crusher. Instead, he started to float in the air. His entire body was covered with jade green-colored heavenly divine energy. With Xiong He as the center, the space within a 10-meter radius around him started to distort. The prairie that Xiong He originally saw also started to distort. It turned into mountain rocks that shattered into powder. In other words, the 10-meter radius around Xiong He had turned into the real Mount Bewitch. As for the larger area around him, it was still an illusion. Haha. Illusion array, formation array is merely a minor path. Before the power of space, wouldn't it still collapse? Said Xiong He with a loud laugh. He started to fly forward. Wherever he flew past, the 10-meter radius around him would become real. It was simply impossible for the illusion to affect his senses. Just like that, Xiong He easily passed through the illusion array. After passing through the illusion array, Xiong He had ascended to the mountainside of Mount Bewitch. Qin Yu, why aren't you accepting your death yet? Shouted Xiong He with a clear voice. At this moment, Qin Yu was standing on the summit of Mount Bewitch with his hands behind his back. With a clear voice he said, Xiong He, it's nothing much that you've broken my illusion array. If you continue forward, you will encounter my most powerful killing array. I shall see how you're going to break it. Killing array. Haha, simple. Xiong He was extremely confident. Although the killing array was capable of attacking, at the very least, it would not cause him to lose his sense of direction. From Xiong He's point of view, He only needed to forcibly endure for a while, and then use his spiked club to smash the mountain and shatter the earth to destroy the foundation of the formation array. Simple. A light smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Don't be too confident. Overconfidence will cause you to lose your life. Qin Yu was extremely confident in this killing array. This killing array was Qin Yu's highest achievement in the field of killing arrays. It was a rank 3 formation array. Furthermore, in terms of might, it was even stronger than ordinary rank 3 formation arrays. That was because this rank 3 formation array was mainly a fire attribute attack. Qin Yu possessed the refining flame wristband. The refining flame wristband was made from 9 purple origin flame beads. With the assistance of the refining flame wristband, Qin Yu was able to set up a fire attribute killing array. It was the most powerful killing array. I refuse to believe that you won't die under the attack of the white pure flames. Qin Yu's face was filled with confidence. The white pure flames were the true flames within the body of a heavenly deity. Qin Yu relied on the perfect overlaying of the 26 layers of formation arrays, and the assistance of the refining flame wristband to unleash the white pure flames. When faced with the white pure flames, even a heavenly deity's body would not be able to withstand it, unless they possessed a heavenly divine armor. It was already extremely rare for Xiong He to possess a low-quality heavenly divine armor. How could he possibly possess a heavenly divine armor? Thus, in this battle, once Xiong He entered it, he would definitely be completely burned by the white pure flames. Even his true spirit would not be left behind. Before the attentive gazes of Taoist Lu Su, Mei Ji and close to 10,000 deities, Xiong He stepped into Qin Yu's strongest killing array. Killing array, break for me. Xiong He excitedly extended his large and fat tongue and licked his thick lips. He held his spiked club with both of his hands and was about to ruthlessly smash it onto the ground. However, right at this moment, a lump of white pure flames emerged from the ground. Xiong He was startled. He then suddenly woke up. Ah, white pure flames. Like a madman, Xiong He violently retreated. However, at this moment, a lump of white pure flames also flew toward him from behind. Xiong He dodged unceasingly. He did not dare to approach the ground at all. That was because there were lumps of white pure flames emerging from the ground. There were also lumps of white pure flames in the sky. Sky, ground, front, back, left and right. White pure flames were flying towards Xiong He from all directions. As time passed, the number of white pure flames grew more and more. Furthermore, they had formed a cage and were flying towards Xiong He. White pure flames, how could there be this many white pure flames? Even a heavenly deity would not be able to emit this many white pure flames. Xiong He was about to cry. There was only a small amount of true flames in a person's body. Who could possibly use this many white pure flames to attack another person? However, Qin Yu had managed to do so. Relying on the Grand Mist spiritual treasure, the refining flame wristband, as well as the strongest killing formation that he could set up, he had set up a fire attribute killing formation. The level of this formation is still too low. If it were a level 4 formation or a level 5 formation, then I reckon that the entire formation would be filled with an endless amount of white pure flames. It would not be like right now, where there are only lumps of white pure flames. My current strength is still too low. Although I've completely refined the refining flame wristband, the amount of white pure flames emitted by the refining flame wristband is too small. If I were stronger, then I would be able to create a white pure flame hell with merely the refining flame wristband. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Xiong He had already given up all hope. Faced with the white pure flames that were coming from all directions, Xiong He was already at a loss as to what to do. He was merely a low-level heavenly deity. If he were a mid-level heavenly deity, then with the comprehension of space that mid-level heavenly deities possessed, he would definitely be able to create an absolute domain and easily escape. However, he was only a low-level heavenly deity. The spatial restriction of the divine realm was too great. In the divine realm, he would only be able to fly. At the very most, he would only be able to distort the surrounding space. White pure flames. Xiong-hei looked to the high-quality divine armor on his body and could only smile bitterly. Faced with the white pure flames, it was simply impossible for a high-quality divine armor to withstand them for even a moment. Xiong-hei had given up all hope. The densely packed white pure flames flew toward Xiong-hei. They were only several meters away from him. However, at this moment, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded occurred. Bang! As if they were in chaos, the lumps of white pure flames actually lost control and flew in all directions. Furthermore, after flying for several meters, all of the white pure flames were extinguished. This. Xiong-hei stared at this scene with a stupefied expression. There was a large hole in his thigh and chest. Blood was flowing out from those holes unceasingly. However, he did not care about that in the slightest. Of the white pure flames that flew in all directions earlier, 2 lumps of white pure flames had landed on his body. As for the other white pure flames, they were extinguished before they could even touch him. Xiong-hei did not know what had happened. 26 overlapping formation arrays. According to the result of my deduction, this Xiong-hei ought to be dead. However, the energy of the white pure flames from earlier seemed to be too great. Even the 3rd and 8th layer of formation arrays were slightly affected. The killing formation that was originally formed as a whole actually collapsed just like that. Qin Yu found it hard to accept this result. Setting up a formation array was an extremely rigorous matter. This was especially true for a formation array with many overlapping formations. As long as a single formation array had a problem, the entire formation array would collapse. Master, this is the importance of experimenting with a formation array. Deductions are merely deductions. They are merely the most ideal situation. However, in reality, the more complicated a formation array is, the more difficult it is to obtain the result of the deduction. Uncle Fu said from the side. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. I understand this principle. However, never would I have expected that Xiong-hei actually managed to escape with his life from this formation array. In the past, Qin Yu had been looking forward to experimenting with his formation array the entire time and discovering the error in his deduction. However, when the error occurred, Qin Yu felt a bit unreconciled. After all, that low-level heavenly deity Xiong-hei had nearly lost his life. However now, huff, huff, the heavens are helping me. The heavens are helping me. Xiong-hei roared twice in excitement. His forehead, face and even back were filled with cold sweat. Xiong-hei used the remaining heavenly divine energy in his body to heal his injuries. To heavenly deities, injuries to their bodies were a small matter. Merely, it required the consumption of heavenly divine energy. As for the consumed heavenly divine energy, it required the use of divine spiritual stones to replenish it. With a flip of his hand, Xiong-hei took out a high-quality divine spiritual stone and quickly healed his injuries. Xiong-hei, you are truly lucky. Xiong-hei raised his head to look. Qin Yu was standing in the sky. At this moment, he was only 200 to 300 meters away from Xiong-hei. Qin Yu, even the heavens are helping me. Xiong-hei was filled with confidence. Even your strongest formation array has been ruined. What other methods do you have? Prepare to die. Xiong-hei rapidly rushed toward Qin Yu. As Qin Yu saw Xiong-hei flying toward him, a sentence from the 900 scrolls of the array path appeared in his mind. Among the 3 great formation arrays, killing arrays, trapping arrays and defensive arrays, the one with the strongest might is the trapping array. Of the 900 scrolls of the array path, over 500 scrolls were all about trapping arrays. As for the scrolls about killing arrays and defensive arrays, there were only close to 400 scrolls. I hope that this sentence from the array path is correct. If it's false, then I would be forced to use martial power. I am not someone who likes to use martial power. Qin Yu muttered. However, he began to move. Chapter 5:16. Qin Yu's entire body was like a graceful wind, constantly drifting in the sky. As for Xiong He, he was frantically chasing after Qin Yu. His eyes were glaring at Xiong He as he roared. Qin Yu, if you have the ability, then don't run away. Fight me fair and square. Qin Yu continued to change directions. However, he said, Xiong He, don't get angry. I am a formation researcher. I am not fond of using martial power. Qin Yu spoke in a dignified manner, but while his hands were flying, they were constantly forming one hand seal after another. Countless talismans flew out from Qin Yu's hands. Red, green, gray, white, black, all kinds of colors of light began to appear in the air. Although Qin Yu was dodging non-stop, Qin Yu was still flying back and forth in circles in the sky above Mount Biwichu. Meiji and Taoist Lu Su were standing in the air. They were chatting with each other. Taoist Lu Su shook his head, sighed and said, although Big Brother Xiong He's strength is powerful, his agility and speed are greatly inferior to that Qin Yu. Look at how ingenious Qin Yu's movements are, and how clean his turns are. Even though Big Brother Xiong He would sometimes exhaust a large amount of heavenly divine energy to increase his speed and catch up to Qin Yu, while Qin Yu was able to make sudden turns at extreme speed, Big Brother Xiong He is unable to do so. That Qin Yu is constantly flying and making hand seals. What is he doing? Meiji said with a frown. Taoist Lu Su smiled and said, in that case, Qin Yu also knew that although it would be easy for the person who set up the formation array to use the divine spiritual stones as the formation array's foundation, once the enemy breaks through the formation array's foundation, the formation array would be broken. Therefore, Qin Yu was prepared to provide the energy with his own body. There's no need for divine spiritual stones to provide energy. Oh, Brother Lu is really smart, Meiji praised. If that Qin Yu doesn't use the divine spiritual stone, Xiong He wouldn't be able to use his spiked club to destroy the array foundation. Doesn't that mean we can't break the formation? No, breaking a formation doesn't necessarily require breaking the formation's foundation, Taoist Lu Su explained. For Qin Yu to do this, although there is no longer any divine spiritual stone as the formation base, he himself is the formation base. Meiji shook her head and said, once Xiong He is trapped in the formation array, how is he going to attack Qin Yu? To provide one's own energy is a disadvantage. The disadvantage is that one must stay within the formation array the entire time and cannot leave. In fact, one cannot even use a large amount of divine energy to attack, explained Taoist Lu Su. What Taoist Lu Su said was correct. What Qin Yu was doing now was to set up a trapping array, and he was prepared to provide the energy needed for the entire trapping array. The arrangement of the trapping array was very complicated. Qin Yu spent an entire day and half of the night to arrange the trapping array. One day and one night sounded quite long, but in the God realm this was nothing. When heavenly deity-level experts of the divine world fought, it was normal for them to fight for hundreds or even thousands of years. This was especially true for heavenly gods of the same level, whose control over space was comparable. It was extremely difficult for them to kill each other. Thus, the battle would also drag on for a very long time. Compared to an endless amount of life, what could hundreds or thousands of years be considered? Xiong He, have a taste of my great formation array. Qin Yu laughed out loud. He then stood in the air. Countless talismans and seals were floating around Qin Yu. At the same time, there were also all kinds of colored belts of light. They had already covered a circumference of 10 miles. This was a relatively large trapping array. 4 rays of dark golden-colored divine energy flew out from Qin Yu's body. These 4 rays of divine energy were assimilated into the trapping array and provided the energy needed for the trapping array. Haha, you're stopping. Are you courting death? Seeing that Qin Yu had actually stopped, Xiong He immediately rushed toward Qin Yu. However, suddenly, Qin Yu disappeared before his eyes. Those talismans and belts of light that he was able to clearly see had also disappeared. Xiong He looked to his surroundings. He was actually only able to see a world of light. Red, black, white, green. The walls formed by all kinds of colors had formed an enormous world. What is going on here? Xiong-hei was still relatively calm. After a short moment, a smile appeared on Xiong-hei's face. This is an illusion formation. However, why is this Qin Yu using the same method as last time? Xiong-hei, I have yet to name this formation array. Today, I shall name it Trapping Bear. If you are able to break this formation array, I will admire you. Qin Yu's voice sounded in the entire region of the Great Formation Array. Formation Array. Trapping Bear. After naming such a childish formation array, Qin Yu had a smile on his face. Merely Xiong-hei was furious. Qin Yu, watch how I am going to break your illusion formation. Xiong-hei roared. Jade green-colored divine energy began to spread out from his body. At the same time, the space surrounding him began to distort. Xiong-hei discovered that something was amiss. In the past, the illusions created by the illusion formation would naturally be broken apart when faced with a distortion of space. However, these various colored walls and the ground were actually very difficult to break apart. The reason why an illusion formation is an illusion formation is because it is mainly an illusion. Furthermore, the illusion can change unceasingly. However, these various colored walls could be considered to be real. Qin Yu's voice sounded in the region of the formation array. There was another person on Mount Bewitchu who was watching all of this. This person was Uncle Fu. Old Master, in merely 200,000 years, Master was able to research the trapping formation array to such a level. He was able to make the 5 elemental energy, light and dark energy, completely coordinate with one another and form this level 3 trapping formation array. Likely, Master will also be able to reach your goal in the future, said Uncle Fu in his heart as he looked to the great formation array in the sky. That Qin Yu, the energy that he emitted earlier was divine energy. Dark golden-colored divine energy. I saw it clearly. What's going on? Taoist Lu Su, who was watching the battle, was confused. Taoist Lu Su and them all saw how Qin Yu set up the formation array earlier and provided the energy to emit 4 rays of divine energy. Earlier, when Qin Yu flew, everyone thought that Qin Yu was a heavenly deity. However, how could a heavenly deity emit divine energy? Meiji was also confused. Perhaps this Qin Yu's soul has just reached the heavenly deity level, and the energy within his body has yet to completely transform. This was the only explanation Meiji could think of. From high-level deity to low-level heavenly deity, one's soul must first reach the nascent soul level. Only then would the energy within one's body transform. However, generally, people who had just reached the heavenly deity level would hide themselves somewhere and only come out after their energy had completely transformed. This Qin Yu, why did he not even transform his divine energy before he came out? This was the only explanation Meiji and Taoist Lu Su could think of. Flying was a remarkable ability that only heavenly deities possessed. In all these years, no one had ever violated this rule. Real. Xiong-hei coldly humphed. Holding his spiked club with one hand, he ruthlessly smashed it onto the red-colored wall before him. When his spiked club smashed onto the red-colored wall, the red-colored wall actually trembled several times. However, it did not break. Xiong-hei opened his eyes wide. As for Qin Yu, who was in the center of the formation array, he nodded in his heart. The 5 elemental energy complemented each other. On top of that, the entire Great Formation Array was composed of multiple layers of formation arrays. On top of that, the principle of the defensive formation array. I don't believe it. Xiong-hei changed his single hand into 2 hands. He grabbed onto his spiked club and ruthlessly smashed it onto the red-colored wall. The red-colored wall shook violently. However, it still did not break. Xiong-hei rapidly smashed his spiked club twice in succession. The wall was no longer able to withstand his attacks, and a large gap appeared on it. Xiong-hei rapidly passed through the red-colored wall. However, after passing through the red-colored wall, he was met with a white-colored wall. There were also some passageways surrounding the white-colored wall. The passageways were composed of monotonous colors. I shall see how many layers of walls this trapping formation array of yours has. Xiong-hei coldly humphed. Xiong-hei then grabbed his spiked club with both hands and began to frantically smash the wall of light. Xiong-hei did not know that the wall of light of the trapping formation array was a barrier that was combined with the defensive formation array. It was also relatively difficult to destroy it. Furthermore, Xiong-hei also did not discover that when he was smashing another wall, the wall that he smashed earlier had already returned to its original state. However, the energy that Qin Yu used to form the wall of light was the divine energy. This caused the might of the formation array to be a bit weaker. Boom! 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 The people outside, such as Taoist Lu Su, Mei Ji and them, were simply unable to see what was happening within the trapping formation array. All they could hear were bursts of rumbling sounds. This sort of rumbling sound continued for 3 days and 3 nights. The light of day, the curtain of darkness, the two of them alternately covered the entire divine realm. Finally, the rumbling sound stopped. Inside the trapping formation array, Xiong-hei was gasping for breath. 3 entire days of frantically smashing walls had already exhausted him. Fuck, I've smashed over 10,000 walls. Furthermore, I've been smashing forward the entire time. Regardless of how big this formation array is, it should still be broken. Xiong-hei felt that he was about to go insane. There were only those few colors in this trapping formation array. The walls were also separated into 2 different colors, red and white. As for the bends, they were also separated into black and green. Some of the doors that appeared were also golden. In short, there were only those few colors. Regardless of where Xiong-hei smashed the walls, he would always feel as if he was walking in the same place. That was because every location was more or less the same. Even the layout was exactly the same. Am I walking in circles at the same place? No, I'm not. I'm very clear that I've been walking forward the entire time. Xiong-hei was truly confused. He looked at the unchanging layout of his surroundings. Red walls and black bends. Xiong-hei understood that as long as he smashed through the red walls, the next location would be the white walls and green bends. Then they would appear alternately, as if he was walking back and forth non-stop. Not only were there walls in front, behind, left, and right, there were also walls above his head. Xiong-hei had once smashed the walls upward or downward. However, no matter how he smashed the walls, he was unable to leave this desolate and monotonous place. Exactly what is going on? If there was no gravity, I might not even know up and down. Xiong-hei raised his head and looked at the walls above him. Then he looked at the walls to his left and right. They were exactly the same. Madness. Xiong-hei was truly about to go insane. After a year. Let me out, let me out. Fuck, let me out. This was the first time that Xiong-hei asked Qin Yu to let him out. This meant that he had admitted defeat. It's very simple. I don't want your life. I only want you to kowtow 3 times and admit defeat. I will immediately let you out of this trapping array. Qin Yu's voice sounded from within the great formation array. Fuck. Bullshit. Xiong-hei cursed angrily. He did not bother to speak anymore. It had only been a year. Back then, he had sparred with Taoist Lu Su for over 700 years. After reaching the heavenly deity level, Xiong-hei possessed the ability to endure loneliness. Merely, before him were still red or white walls and black or green bends. The layout was also the same. The monotonous scenery had already caused Xiong-hei to feel dizzy. Being trapped for a short year was even more tiring than fighting against Taoist Lu Su for over 700 years. 10 years later, Xiong-hei discovered that his dull days were gone. That was because those walls were no longer as easy for him to smash. Once he smashed the walls, the shattered walls would burst forth with flames, lightning and various other kinds of attacks. The more time passed, the more strange the attacks became. Qin Yu was sitting cross-legged in the center of the great formation array with a smile on his face. Currently, what Qin Yu needed to do was to try his best to fuse the killing array with the trapping array. Merely, it was extremely difficult to fuse them perfectly. Qin Yu had been trying non-stop all these years. As for the pitiful Xiong He, he was merely an experimental subject. Neither Taoist Lu Su nor Meiji dared to enter the Great Formation Array. That was because Taoist Lu Su, who had studied formation arrays, knew that once one entered the formation array, if one was unable to break through the formation array, then one could only be trampled upon by others. Xiong He had been trapped in the Great Formation Array for over 200 years now. A portion of the 10,000-strong army had already returned. However, there were still many people waiting here. Ordinarily, these people would even spar with each other to kill time. Meiji, you've returned to see Lord Black Dragon. What did Lord Black Dragon say? Taoist Lu Su looked to Meiji. Meiji had just returned to the Black Dragon Pool once to report the matter regarding Xiong He. To the ordinary people of the Black Dragon Pool, Lord Black Dragon had already disappeared. However, Taoist Lu Su, Meiji and Xiong He all knew that Lord Black Dragon had actually been in the Black Dragon Pool the entire time. Lord Black Dragon said that this matter is merely a minor matter. What he is currently dealing with is a major matter. Furthermore, Xiong He is still alive. Lord Black Dragon will not come and deal with this matter for the time being, Meiji said. Taoist Lu Su nodded. Lord Black Dragon's reaction was as he had anticipated. Meiji, what do you think Lord Black Dragon is planning to do in all these hundreds of millions of years? Taoist Lu Su asked Meiji. Meiji shook her head. I don't know. It's best that you don't think too much about it. As Xiong He has started smashing again, he is truly persevering. Meiji looked to the Great Formation Array in the sky. Boom! 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 Sounds rang out once again. Chapter 5:17. The sky was as blue as the finest celadone. As for the enormous formation with a circumference of 10 miles floating in the sky, it was still the same as it was 200+ years ago. Year after year, the rumbling sounds from the formation would still occasionally sound. Evidently, Xiong He was still alive. There were several thousand troops from the Black Dragon Pool below Mount Biwichu. All of the deities were chatting, training, cursing and so on. It's already been 200+ years. Lord Xiong He should just directly admit defeat. Or save his strength. Why is he always resisting? He hasn't come out for over 200 years. Did he really think that he would be able to come out? An old man with a head full of green short hair sat cross-legged on top of a stone as he spoke with dissatisfaction. There were several tens of deities beside this old man. Among them, a purple-haired woman coldly snorted and said, "Old Green, don't gossip here. Lord Xiong He is not someone that you can evaluate. Look at how Lord Xiong He is trying his best to attack the formation non-stop. He has not given up even after over 200 years. For you to have the same perseverance as Lord Xiong He, I truly admire you. Even though he knows that he can't do it, he still does it. Others have said that Lord Xiong He's true form is a bear. In the past I doubted it. However now, it would appear that it's true." A man with a scholarly appearance leaned against a large tree and said with a smile, to the deities who had lived for a long time and were bored, when they had nothing to do, they would be able to watch their boss suffer a great loss. Although they would usually be very respectful before Xiong He, Qin Yu sat cross-legged. Beneath him was a lump of green light. That green light was like a lump of cloud. Qin Yu had sat cross-legged like this for over 200 years. In the past 200+ years, Qin Yu had not moved at all. Qin Yu lightly raised his brows. With a smile on his face he said, "Xiong He, it's already been over 200 years. How much longer are you planning to resist? Do as I say, kneel down and kowtow 3 times to admit defeat. If you do that, I will let you go." At this moment, Xiong He, who was in the Great Formation, was only wearing a pair of large underpants. His chest that was covered with black chest hair was bare. His bare thighs were also covered with black hair. If one did not look at his face, he was simply no different from a bear. Huff huff. Xiong-hei placed his spiked club to the side. He sat on the ground and gasped for breath. Xiong-hei turned around and looked at the white wall before him. It was so white that it dazzled his eyes. He then looked at the green passageway next to him. It was so green that he wanted to vomit. It was too monotonous. 200 years of devastation. This Qin Yu is too abnormal. Xiong-hei was so angry that he clenched his fists tightly. His entire body was trembling. Fuck, he was still fine a few years ago. Why is it that he's always attacking me when I'm not smashing the wall? As time passed, Qin Yu became more and more proficient in fusing the killing formation with the trapping formation. Practice was the best way to learn. These 200 years of learning were much more effective than Qin Yu's thousands of years of deduction. If this Xiong-hei were to truly kowtow and beg for forgiveness, Qin Yu would not be willing to part with such a good experimental subject. Heavenly deities were used as test subjects, and they wouldn't die so easily. Where could he find such a person? Exactly how long are you planning to imprison me for? Xiong-hei suddenly raised his head and roared. His eyes were filled with anger and grief. Don't worry. I still have a lot of methods that I haven't used yet. The Tao of formations is boundless. If I am to slowly experiment, even if I have to experiment for 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 100 million years, there would still be no end to it. Qin Yu spoke with a unique tone. It was as if he was infatuated with formations. Xiong-hei, for you to be able to taste so many formations, you should feel proud. Xiong-hei was on the verge of collapse. If he were to train in seclusion for 1,000,000 years, he would not mind it in the slightest. If he were to be in a high-intensity battle with others, he would be able to endure it even if he were to fight for several thousand years. However, being in this trapping formation was tormenting him unceasingly. It was tormenting his nerves. The monotonous and dull scenery in his surroundings. It was so much so that he would feel a headache whenever he saw this color. It was so big that he felt as if his head was going to explode. All of this had caused Xiong-hei to be extremely irritable, especially when he thought about how this sort of irritable days would be endless. Xiong-hei started to tremble. Even his soul was trembling. Xiong-hei clenched his teeth. Suddenly, he raised his head and said with absolute determination, Qin Yu, Lord Qin Yu, I beg of you, please spare me. Please spare me. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and have offended you, Senior. Xiong-hei was unable to resist anymore. Oh, you're begging for forgiveness. However, don't forget what I said earlier. Kowtow 3 times. Qin Yu said with a smile. Qin Yu still remembered how tyrannical and arrogant Xiong-hei was when he led his army to Mount Biwichu. He held onto his spiked club and smashed it crazily. His current pitiful appearance truly caused one to sigh endlessly. Kowtow! Xiong-hei's entire body was shivering. His big black face had turned deep red like a monkey's buttocks. In that case, you can wait for another 1 or 2 million years. Perhaps I might be in high spirits and research for over 100 million years. You can slowly wait in this great bear trapping formation. Qin Yu's voice was still neither angry nor annoyed. 100 million years. Beads of sweat the size of pearls appeared on Xiong-hei's forehead and cheeks. Xiong-hei touched his face with his thick black hands. The sweat dripped onto the ground. However, Xiong-hei still had his head lowered. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long period of silence, Qin Yu, you must agree to a request of mine. If you do, I will kowtow. Xiong-hei raised his head. His eyes were filled with absolute determination. Qin Yu was astonished. This stupid bear was truly planning to kowtow. In Qin Yu's heart, deities were generally extremely arrogant. It was extremely difficult for them to lower their proud heads. Speak, what request? Qin Yu said with a smile. In his heart, Qin Yu was curious as to what request Xiong He might have. If I am to truly kowtow to you, you must promise me one thing. You must not spread the news of me kowtowing to you, said Xiong He solemnly. Okay, I promise, Qin Yu said straightforwardly. Lord Qin Yu, please swear an oath. That way I will be able to feel more at ease. Xiong He continued to state his request. Qin Yu smiled. Good, I'll agree to it. I swear to the heavens that if I am to tell others about Xiong He kowtowing to you today, I will suffer the wrath of the heavens. Only then did Xiong He let out a long sigh of relief. Lord Qin Yu, I admit defeat. Xiong He suddenly stood up. Then, he kneeled down on both knees and knocked his forehead onto the ground 3 times. These 3 kowtows. I hope that Lord Qin Yu will be able to forgive me. Please spare me this one time. After he finished saying those words, Xiong He's forehead was still knocked onto the ground. He was waiting for Qin Yu's response. At this moment, Xiong He was extremely furious. Qin Yu, once I leave this place, I will definitely make you regret your actions today. I will make you pay 100 times, 1,000 times, for what you've done today. Haha. To be able to obtain 3 kowtows from a heavenly deity is even more satisfying than killing a heavenly deity. Haha. Qin Yu's loud laughter sounded. Xiong He's face immediately grew even darker. At this time, the trapping formation, which was originally composed of red, white, black, green, gold and other colors, began to collapse. Countless walls turned into ribbons of light, and countless runes, seals and runes disappeared. Xiong He raised his head and looked to the sky. An azure blue sky. Pure white silk like floating clouds. He lowered his head and looked to the ground. A verdant and lush mountain forest. Several thousand deities were currently raising their heads to look at him in shock. Among them were Meiji and Taoist Lu Su. I've finally regained my freedom. Once Xiong He obtained his freedom, he felt a burst of happiness. He raised his head and started to howl. His voice was like a rumbling thunder that resonated through the entire heaven and earth. Xiong He is able to endure what others cannot endure. Qin Yu admires you. Xiong He, you can return now. Qin Yu's clear voice sounded. Xiong He looked to the distance. Several hundred meters away from Xiong He, Qin Yu was standing in the air. His long black hair was drifting with the wind. His gown was fluttering in the wind. At this moment, Taoist Lu Su and Meiji had also flown up from below. In a short moment, they arrived beside Xiong He. Taoist Lu Su asked curiously, Big brother Xiong He, what did you endure? The muscles in Xiong He's eyes trembled. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He said via divine awareness voice transmission. Lu Su, Meiji, that Qin Yu's flight is extremely fast. His speed is extremely fast. The 3 of us should join hands and kill him from 3 different directions. The 2 of you are faster than me to begin with. If the 3 of us join hands, we will definitely be able to kill him. Lu Su and Meiji glanced at each other. Brother Lu, what do you think? Meiji asked via divine awareness voice transmission. That's doable. That Qin Yu would require a certain amount of time to set up a formation array. The trapping array that he had set up earlier had already dissipated. If he were to set it up again, it would require a day or 2. Such a long period of time would be sufficient for us to kill him, said Taoist Lu Su. Xiong He looked to Lu Su and Meiji. Lu Su and Meiji smiled and nodded. Xiong He's smile immediately blossomed. Xiong He coldly looked to Qin Yu in the distance. He shouted angrily, Qin Yu, for you to humiliate me like this today, I shall avenge you. After he finished saying that, Xiong He charged toward Qin Yu like a meteorite from outer space. With an earth-shattering aura, he charged toward Qin Yu. As for Meiji and Taoist Lu Su, they turned into 2 light breezes. They were planning to surround Xiong He from the side. Seeing this scene, Qin Yu merely smiled and nodded. Sure enough, it's as I anticipated. However, To be able to force this Xiong He to kowtow to me in the last couple months, it could be said that I've made a profit. Qin Yu had a feeling that he reckoned that he was only a couple months away from breaking through to the origin stage. Actually, even if Xiong He did not beg for forgiveness, Qin Yu would still have to dissolve the formation array and wholeheartedly break through to the origin stage in a couple months. Like a sharp arrow, Qin Yu's entire body shot downwards. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiong He's bloodshot eyes were incomparably malevolent. Like a cannonball, he smashed downward. As for Meiji, Lu Su and Meiji, they chased after him. However, when Qin Yu entered the forest and the three of them chased after him, they discovered he's gone. Meiji and Lu Su were both incomparably puzzled. Gone. Impossible. Xiong He was like a mad blind man. He was running amok on Mount Bewitchu. With a malevolent expression, he roared, "Qin Yu, come out, come out!" Chapter 518. Rumble. The mountain forest was trembling. The entire Mount Bewitchu was trembling non-stop. Shattered rocks rolled down from the mountain unceasingly. Large trees were smashed apart. Flowers and grasses were crushed. The entire Mount Bewitchu was in a complete mess. "Qin Yu, get out here!" The furious Xiong He grabbed his spiked club and frantically began to sweep through the entire Mount Bewitchu. Facing Xiong He's overflowing anger, the entire Mount Bewitchu was trembling. Boom! 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 The numerous large craters left behind by the spiked club had caused the entire Mount Bewitchu to appear like a face filled with scars. Xiong He flew to the foot of the Mount Bewitchu and stood beside Taoist Lu Su and Meiji. Xiong He was still gasping for breath. He held his spiked club with one hand. His pupils that were blazing like ghost flames emitted a frantic and furious gaze. He swept his gaze over the entire Mount Bewitchu. It was as if he wanted to find Qin Yu. "Big brother Xiong He, don't be angry," Taoist Lu Su urged. However, Xiong He acted as if he did not hear anything. He continued to look at the various locations of the Mount Bewitchu. "Big brother Xiong, isn't it merely a single Qin Yu? There's no need for you to be this angry," Meiji urged with a soft voice. Xiong He glared at Meiji with his frantic gaze. This caused Meiji's voice to suddenly stop. Seeing that Meiji no longer said anything, Xiong He once again looked to the Mount Bewitchu. "Big brother Lu, what's going on with this Xiong He? He's been trapped for over 200 years. Is it really worth it for him to be this frantic?" Meiji said to Taoist Lu Su via divine awareness voice transmission. Taoist Lu Su looked to Xiong He. He also said via divine awareness voice transmission, "Logically, it shouldn't be. However, Meiji, do you still remember the words that Qin Yu once said? Xiong He, you can endure what others cannot." Say, what exactly did Xiong He endure in that great formation array? For him to be this angry right now, could it be related to that matter? That's right, that's very possible. Meiji expressed her approval. However, what sort of humiliation did Xiong He receive? Taoist Lu Su and Meiji had never imagined that the extremely arrogant Xiong He would kowtow to Qin Yu. Lu Su. Xiong He's gaze suddenly shifted to Taoist Lu Su. Xiong He's aghast gaze had caused Taoist Lu Su to become extremely careful. "Big brother Xiong He, is there something you need?" Taoist Lu Su did not wish to anger this crazy bear, especially when this bear was still in a berserk state. Taoist Lu Su still remembered that before Xiong He possessed a heavenly divine artifact, Xiong He was able to fight against him for several hundred years and even held the upper hand. As for Xiong he had obtained a heavenly divine artifact bestowed upon him by Lord Black Dragon. His strength had become the strongest among the three of them. That was why Xiong He's power was the strongest. "Lu Su, aren't you proficient in formations and other techniques? Immediately set up a large formation and burn down the entire Mount Bewitchu. Burn it until there's nothing left." The gaze with which Xiong He looked to Mount Bewitch You was filled with savagery. I must definitely find this Qin Yu. Even if I cannot find him, I must still destroy his mountain. Although Xiong He had swept through Mount Bewitch You earlier, the most he could do was to create some large craters and break some large trees. There was not much of an effect from his actions. Destroy this Mount Bewitch You. That's an easy task. We merely need to use the extremely silent heavenly flames," said Lu Su with a smile. As a low-level heavenly deity, Lu Su's strength could not be considered to be strong. However, he was proficient in some of the unorthodox techniques. For him, destroying a Mount Bewitch You was a piece of cake. "Big brother Lu, it'll depend on your ability," said Meiji sweetly. Taoist Lu Su started to float in the air. He casually tossed out 36 mid-quality divine spiritual stones from his hands. These 36 mid-quality divine spiritual stones landed in all directions of the Mount Bewitch You. They surrounded the entire Mount Bewitch You. Gorgeous talismans were being shot out from Taoist Lu Su's hands unceasingly. To an outsider, those peculiar talismans were extremely profound and complicated. However, those who were proficient in formations were able to immediately understand the uses of the different talismans. After spending close to 2 hours, a large formation array that covered the entire Mount Bewitch You was finally formed. Chi. The entire formation array started to emit rays of golden light. At the same time, countless golden flames started to appear like a flood. In practically a blink of an eye, they had engulfed the entire Mount Bewitch You. These golden flames even had a faint blue-colored flame on their outer layer. Extremely silent heavenly flames. If this was in the immortal devil and demon realm, then even ordinary level 9 immortal emperors and demon emperors would not be able to withstand it. However, in the divine realm, the extremely silent heavenly flames were only capable of burning those plants and some ordinary divine realm demonic beasts. Ordinary divine realm demonic beasts that were not even at the deity level were also being burned to death by the extremely silent heavenly flames. All kinds of miserable cries sounded unceasingly. At this moment, the animals of Mount Bewitch You that had hidden themselves and escaped the calamity were all in a miserable state. If it were the black divine flames, then they would be able to instantly die without any pain. However, the extremely silent heavenly flames were only capable of slowly burning them to death, causing them to suffer for an even longer period of time. The trees had turned into ashes. The lake water had dried up. Even the plants on the stones had been completely burned. Only the stones that had been burned to the point of cracking remained. As expected of the stones of the divine realm. At the very most, they would be burned to the point of cracking. The extremely silent heavenly flames were unable to burn them to ashes. After burning for close to an hour, the overflowing flames had turned the several thousand faces at the foot of the mountain into a golden color. When the extremely silent heavenly flames dissipated, the entire Mount Bewitch You had become bare. The only thing that remained were the ugly stones. Merely by looking at the scene before their eyes, it was simply impossible to imagine how beautiful this place used to be. Big brother Xiong He. Lu Su quietly looked to Xiong He beside her. Even though Mount Bewitch You had been burned to the ground, they were still unable to see Qin Yu. Qin Yu had disappeared just like that. He had disappeared before everyone's eyes. Xiong He's eyes emitted a dim black radiance as he swept his gaze across the bare Mount Bewitch You. Then with a cold voice he said, "Humph, you might be able to escape the first time, but you won't be able to escape the second time. Let's return to the Black Dragon Pool." "Yes, big brother Xiong," Meiji said sweetly. Right after Xiong He took 2 steps forward, he saw the stele. On the stele were the words Mount Bewitch You. Due to the fact that this stele was located at the foot of the mountain, it was not damaged. Upon seeing this stele, Xiong He recalled the owner of this Mount Bewitch You, Qin Yu. When he thought of Qin Yu, a heart-piercing humiliation emerged from his heart. Humph! Like an enormous axe, Xiong He's leg ruthlessly smashed onto the stele. Bang! The stele was torn apart. shattered into 4 pieces. Only the word, bewitch, remained intact. Under the lead of the 3 heavenly deities, the majestic several thousand troops of the Black Dragon Pool left Mount Bewitch You just like that. Only the completely burned Mount Bewitch You and the shattered steel remained. Inside the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm, outside of an elegant courtyard, was a thick and solid tree that was filled with leaves. Below the tree were 2 cyan-colored stone tables. Uncle Fu, Kuro, Wu Lan, Wu He, Lu Shui and Hong Yu, the 6 of them sat down at the 2 tables. All 6 of them had expressions of worry in their eyes. That was because earlier, before Qin Yu entered the courtyard, he had said to them, "Everyone, this time around, I will be entering seclusion training to seek for a breakthrough. To me, this time around, my training is extremely important. At the same time, it is also somewhat dangerous. Furthermore, I do not know how long it will take for me to make a breakthrough. I hope that you all do not worry. At the very least, there will not be any danger to my life during this training." After he finished saying those words, Qin Yu merely patted Kuro's shoulder and then walked into the courtyard. There will not be any danger to my life. However, Kuro did not believe that. He believed that Qin Yu was deliberately comforting him and making him feel at ease. Kuro looked to the surrounding people and said solemnly, "During the period of time when Big Brother is making a breakthrough, I will be waiting here. From today onwards, you all are not allowed to make a ruckus here so as to not disturb Big Brother." Uncle Fu and the others nodded. From this moment onwards, the 5 of them did not say a single word and quietly waited. Kuro looked to the secluded courtyard and began to worry in his heart. "Big Brother, you must not lose your life for the sake of stellar transformations." Kuro was worried in his heart. Within the secluded courtyard, Qin Yu's room, Qin Yu was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. He was completely silent. In actuality, there were still several months before the final breakthrough. However, at this moment, Qin Yu had already made his preparations. However, even now, Qin Yu had yet to discover the most perfect evolution path. "Will I die?" Qin Yu asked himself. If he did not pursue perfection and used the safest evolution path, he would definitely not die. However, the safest evolution path was also the one with the weakest power. Creating an unprecedented cultivation technique was inherently dangerous, especially when this cultivation technique was a top-notch one. In the astral space, the entire space was twisting and spinning because of the origin. It was like an angry sea that was constantly undulating. Qin Yu's consciousness was constantly sensing these fluctuations. His consciousness and the astral space fused as one. He could feel the changes in space and the origin from the inside. He could feel the entire flower paste space from the outside. What exactly is the flower paste space? Qin Yu's consciousness was in contact with the flower paste space. Waves of ancient aura invaded Qin Yu's consciousness, causing Qin Yu to become even calmer. His heart was calm. It was so calm that there were no fluctuations at all. As time passed, Qin Yu suddenly felt as though the entire astral space had become an embryo. The astral space was also him. He had become an embryo. As for the flower paste space, it was his mother's stomach. This was what Qin Yu was feeling. Although this feeling was strange and absurd, for some unknown reason, Qin Yu was completely enjoying the aura of the flower paste space. His consciousness even began to feel drowsy. In this sort of state, time continued to flow. A few months passed in the blink of an eye. After so many years of evolution, the origin had shrunk to an extremely small size. If one looked at it with their eyes, they would only see the origin become an extremely small black hole. Because the origin was too small, the surrounding space had completely collapsed. As for Qin Yu, he was still in that drowsy state. Even the face of Qin Yu's physical body had a peaceful, innocent smile on it. But in this sort of state, Qin Yu's consciousness was constantly flashing past one scene after another. Nebulas, Lu Xing stellar cores, planets, stars. The evolution of the universe was constantly flashing past Qin Yu's mind. The speed at which it flashed past was tens of millions of times faster than when Qin Yu was deliberately trying to deduce things. At the same time, when he reached the origin realm, his consciousness continued to deduce things. At this moment, the speed at which his consciousness was deducing things was hundreds of millions of times faster than in the past. This sort of thing happened while Qin Yu was still drowsy. Bang! It was as though a bolt of lightning had struck Qin Yu's consciousness, causing Qin Yu's consciousness to wake up. By the time Qin Yu woke up, the astral space had already evolved to the extreme. The origin had already shrunk to the extreme. If Qin Yu hadn't woken up, the origin might have exploded. Without anyone to guide it, the explosion of the origin would have caused Qin Yu's consciousness to collapse. The origin. So this is one. This is the most primitive point. Qin Yu had a feeling of seeing the moon after the clouds and mist were parted. Although he did not understand the principle behind it, there was a voice roaring in Qin Yu's heart. That's right, that is the most correct, the most perfect evolution path. That was the path. At this moment, Qin Yu's physical body, which had been sitting cross-legged in the room, suddenly disappeared. Yes, Qin Yu's physical body had disappeared. In the astral space, Qin Yu's physical body had suddenly appeared. At this moment, Qin Yu's hands were spread open. His eyes were closed as he hovered in the astral space. At this moment, Qin Yu was immersed in a very mysterious and very special state. Break! Qin Yu's eyes were still closed, but he pointed at the origin with one hand. Like a peanut being split, the origin split into two halves with a cracking sound. The upper half of the origin transformed into a cyan stream of air. The cyan stream of air roared and surged out, instantly engulfing the entire astral space. The other half of the origin transformed into a turbid gray stream of air. The gray stream of air also wildly engulfed the entire astral space. In the astral space, the two streams of air began to entangle with each other. It seemed as though they were fighting. Qin Yu's eyes were still closed. A calm smile suddenly appeared on Qin Yu's face. He supported the sky with one hand and the ground with the other. He softly shouted, "Splitting heaven and earth." After exhaling, Qin Yu's eyes suddenly opened. Whoosh! The originally entangled cyan and gray streams of air seemed to have been guided. The cyan stream of air flew up, while the gray stream of air descended. Qin Yu's body was growing. It was constantly growing. The larger Qin Yu's body grew, the higher the cyan stream of air became. As time passed, the cyan stream of air finally condensed into a solid layer of cyan, while the gray stream of air formed a solid, boundless earth. In an instant, Qin Yu's entire body returned to its normal size. Looking up, the cyan sky was as pure as celadon. Looking down at the ground below, the ground was boundlessly wide and extended. The area was so large that Qin Yu was simply unable to calculate it. Because the area of the ground was constantly extending. Is this splitting heaven and earth? Qin Yu had only just recovered from that mysterious state. Seeing what he had done, Qin Yu felt a sense of disbelief. Chapter 519. The thick earth stretched as far as the eye could see, but Qin Yu could clearly sense the changes in the world he had created through his creation of the heavens and earth. The earth was constantly expanding, and the size of the world was constantly expanding. The size of this land is larger than 1,000 purple mystic planets combined. Qin Yu sighed. Stepping onto this land, Qin Yu's heart was extremely calm. This world belonged to him. This world was completely under his control. Since creation of the heavens and earth created a new universe, then the 10th level of this stellar transformation shall be the universe realm. Qin Yu decided on the name of the 10th level. The extremity of the heavens and earth of this world was, in fact, the outer membrane of the universe. This world was constantly absorbing the flower paste energy of the outside world, causing this world to constantly expand. I didn't expect it to evolve to such a level. Even my body has entered. Qin Yu was somewhat shocked. In the original universe, Qin Yu could only enter with his consciousness. He couldn't enter with his body. Who knew what would happen during the evolution process? Even his body had entered. This world is too monotonous, Qin Yu said. Suddenly, the universe world began to change. Rivers, mountains, swamps, oceans, lakes, deserts, trees, plants, flowers. The originally monotonous world began to change at an astonishing speed. As all of this happened, Qin Yu only smiled. When this world was successfully created, Qin Yu knew what sort of divine ability he had in this world. In his own universe world, Qin Yu could be said to be omnipotent. He could only be said to be omnipotent, but he wasn't omnipotent. Because this universe world was still growing, it hadn't reached a perfect stage. In this universe world, Qin Yu could only barely use its spatial powers. He couldn't use its temporal powers. However, this universe world was created by Qin Yu. Even if a God King was here, even if a God King controlled the spatial laws, as long as Qin Yu wanted to, the God King could forget about using the spatial powers here. Because Qin Yu was the master here. Qin Yu exclaimed in surprise. His entire body instantly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in mid-air. At that moment, at this spot in the Chen Kuan world, a mysterious yellow gas was being produced. The speed at which it was produced wasn't considered fast, but after a while, a mysterious yellow gas the size of half a person was suspended in the air. When the Shenhuang Qi was born, Qin Yu, as the owner of this world, naturally had information about the Shenhuang Qi in his mind. The Shenhuang Qi was born when the world was created. Once the Shenhuang Qi is infused into a weapon, the toughness and defensive ability of the weapon will reach an extreme level. Qin Yu's face immediately bloomed into a smile. I didn't expect that this thing would be born when the Chenkuan world was formed. Hardness and defense. All right. Qin Yu extended his hand, and the divine spear waning snow appeared in his hand. In the divine realm, if one did not incorporate Grand Mist's spiritual energy, the strongest weapon that one could craft, a high-quality heavenly divine artifact, would generally possess a might equivalent to a third-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. As for the divine spear waning snow, although it did not possess Grand Mist spiritual energy, its might was comparable to a second-rate spiritual treasure. It was the craftsman god's proudest creation. Without incorporating Grand Mist spiritual energy, it was comparable to a second-rate spiritual treasure. If the divine spear waning snow were to fuse with the Shenhuang Qi that was born when the world was created, how powerful would it be? The divine spear waning snow floated out from Qin Yu's hand. After that, the divine spear waning snow started to float in the air. The lump of Shenhuang Qi the size of half a person had completely enveloped the divine spear waning snow. Qin Yu sensed the speed at which the Shenhuang Qi was assimilating with the divine spear waning snow. He sighed. What a slow assimilation speed. With this speed, who knows how long it would take for the divine spear waning snow to completely assimilate with it. Forget about it. Since I am not going to use the divine spear waning snow for the time being, I'll just let it slowly assimilate with the divine spear waning snow in this Chenkuan world. Qin Yu was able to sense the point of connection between the universal world and the Zhonglan's realm. The point of connection between the two worlds was the location where Qin Yu had disappeared. Qin Yu controlled the spatial energy and connected it to the location of the Zhonglan's realm. Qin Yu knew that once the universal world's spatial energy covered a certain area, he would be able to instantly arrive at that area. In the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm, outside of Qin Yu's elegant courtyard, Kuro, Wu Lan and them had been quietly waiting here for several years now. In these several years, none of them had said a single word. They were only quietly waiting. Big brother, you must succeed. Kuro had a very serious expression on his face. His heart was very heavy. That was because, under normal circumstances, the speed of one's breakthrough from one level to another would be very short. However, Qin Yu had not come out for several years already. Fortunately, the Jianglan's realm did not change much. At the very least, it meant that Qin Yu was still alive. A creak sound was heard. The door to the room opened. Kuro, Wu Lan, Wu He, Hong Yu, Lu Shui and Uncle Fu all stood up at practically the same time. The six of them looked at each other in pleasant surprise and then immediately rushed toward Qin Yu's courtyard. Kuro took the lead. He was the first to push open the courtyard's door. Sure enough, he saw Qin Yu walking out from his room. At this moment, he had already walked into the courtyard. Haha, I've already successfully broken through. Seeing Kuro's worried expression, Qin Yu immediately said with a smile. Kuro and them immediately displayed relaxed smiles. As for Lu Shui and Hong Yu, the two girls started chattering. I've already said that Lord Qin Yu would definitely succeed. Isn't it the same as what I said? I think that we should properly celebrate. In these past several years, I've been so scared by you all that I haven't even been able to breathe loudly. Hong Yu, who was dressed in pink, said while holding her chest. Good, let's properly celebrate. At this moment, Qin Yu's mood was also extremely good. After a lively meal, Qin Yu and Kuro chatted about a lot of things. Qin Yu had been outside for several hundred years, whereas Kuro had been in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm for several tens of thousands of years. Currently, Kuro's strength was much higher than before. However, he was still only at the mid-level deity level. Big brother, this breakthrough, how much has your strength increased? Kuro asked. Hearing Kuro's question, Qin Yu displayed a strange smile on his face. How much has his strength increased? Qin Yu himself also felt strange. When he was at the origin stage, he still possessed the origin energy. However, now that he had reached the universe stage, he could only use the spatial energy from his universal world. As for how powerful the spatial energy was, even Qin Yu himself did not know. Furthermore, would the spatial energy from his universal world be rejected by the divine realm? After all, the divine realm and Qin Yu's universal world were two different worlds. Other than this, there was another special aspect. A change had occurred in his Dantian space. The black hole that was originally in his Dantian space had actually disappeared. Qin Yu did not know when it had disappeared. However, he reckoned that it should have been during the time when his universal world was formed. Other than this, there was actually a lump of white pure flame in his Dantian. When Qin Yu was at the origin stage, the true flame within his body was the black divine flame. However, when he was at the universe stage, his true flame was the white pure flame. Merely, Qin Yu did not expect that the white pure flame would actually run into his Dantian. However, merely by looking at Qin Yu's body now, it was no different from an ordinary person's. Although he no longer had the black hole in his Dantian, after establishing his universal world, Qin Yu had a soul connection with his universal world. It was so much that with a single thought, he would be able to directly teleport into the universal world. Compared to the Jianglan's realm, I reckon that the universal world is much safer. Qin Yu judged in his heart. After all, if he were to hide in the Jianglan's realm, the Jianglan's realm would still be in its original location. At the very most, the Jianglan's realm would turn into granules, rocks and other objects. However, the universal world was a real world. Once he escaped into it, it would be impossible for others to find Qin Yu. If my enemies were to truly enter the universal world, then that would be the best. Qin Yu's face was filled with smiles. In the universal world, he would be invincible. Big brother, what are you thinking about? I'm asking you how much your strength has increased this time. Kuro said. Qin Yu woke up from his contemplation. He immediately smiled and said, This time my strength and my soul's level has increased slightly. I'm about to reach the peak of the high-level deity level. I'm only a step away from reaching the heavenly deity level. Peak. Kuro's eyes immediately opened wide. I've bitterly trained for over 200,000 years and only then am I close to the peak of the mid-level deity level. Big brother, you don't seem to have trained much. Kuro felt a bit dispirited. The difference between their cultivation speed was too great. Qin Yu shook his head helplessly and said, "Before reaching the universe realm, I could only be considered as an ordinary high-level deity. Perhaps when I broke through to the universe realm, my soul had increased a bit. That time I did not sense it either." However, Qin Yu knew that the most difficult hurdle to reach from the peak of the high-level deity level to the heavenly deity level. There were countless people in the divine realm who were stuck at the peak of the high-level deity level and were unable to reach the heavenly deity level. "It seems that I will have to work even harder." Kuro nodded. He then smiled to Qin Yu and said, "Big brother, I'll be returning first." Qin Yu stood up and saw Kuro off. After Kuro left, Qin Yu stood outside the door and looked to the boundless Zhonglan's realm. This Zhonglan's realm originally belonged to Uncle Lan. Furthermore, it was Uncle Lan's #1 spiritual treasure. Compared to it, my universal world is merely unable to control time. Mainly, it's because my universal world has yet to mature. When I see Uncle Lan, I'll return the Zhonglan's realm to him. That you're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.